Hey guys, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Alma. I'm out and about. I haven't been in the last 2 weeks. It's been pretty shiny and nice and turning everything into a crisp bonfire. And everything's kind of burning down south in North Carolina, South Carolina. And today the smoke has finally reached us. So no one seems to notice. Well, let's see what we got here. Someone knows.
But even what you want to work for. Hello? What does it do his past, do his future? What follows will follow, now or in 10,000 years. All that matters is, you see your world, and I see mine. Is that not enough? No matter what we each believe? Of course. You look despondent. I guess I am. Why? Because I hoped. For what? For this meeting. Such a long time. To learn. To love. Yes, about your people. Your beliefs. The secrets of your life on Mars. Dear. Dear. I wanted to really do. You know what I get up in the morning? Oh, I get up in the morning. I'm very, very, very controlled by light, as we all are, except for all those denizens of. I basically I live in a hollow. Like if you were to take London and Mississippi, put them together, that's my holler, and so it's kind of dank all the time. And I have 4 mountains all around me. And so when the sun comes up in the east, the light doesn't come down on where my little man cave is until about 10:30. So it's actually kind of, the light, it goes from being darker than dark.
I'm talking to a buddy of mine, Scholastic, and he was telling me that he gets $3,000 a month from his wife had been a college professor, and so once she died, he got her Social Security. And that was Dave. Dave was always, and he wanted everyone to know he had an id, so he had to call him Dave Id. And we were interesting. And, I always had to prove something, and I didn't care. And you always kind of badmouth people. I'm not quite badmouth. But my girl, we did a lot of great things. And, I live on $400 a month. He probably makes $6,000. And then his wife, who was a corporate executive, she probably, with all her investments, probably makes $6,000. But they're kind of miserable. And I live like a millionaire on $400 a month. And that is, kind of, what are you doing?
wanted to really do. You know what I mean? Get up in the morning? 100,000 workers in the government. On every, you name it, he did it, right? In Greenpoint, along the water, they put in these giant buildings. Yeah. Like in Long Island City. Yeah. You know, they're like 20-story buildings. Yeah. She and her husband, who's not Win Lamb, who she was going for years. She's married somebody else, and they, in a lottery, they won an apartment, albeit a tiny apartment. By the way, did you ever get in touch with Jerry? Oh, yeah. Oh, great. But he's, you know, that was like 4 phones ago. That was 4 what? Phones ago, you know? I go through... Yeah, I've been thinking about reaching out to him. I think I hooked up with him through Facebook. Okay. But yes, we had for about a year we talked a good deal, and he had a family, and he had a pretty good job. He was a bench electrician for in the military. Yes, Marconi missiles. Yeah, well, he was doing interesting. I knew the technology he was playing with, so he was somewhat, and they paid him pretty good, and his kids were happy. And he said, one of the reasons why I have this job is that I live with you guys, and that you live with me. Because Don and I went and lived at his crazy mother's house when they were all kids. And Jerry's maybe 10, and his next sister, she was probably 13, and then there were the 2 boys, and then the oldest girl. And we stayed with them for, I don't know, on and off 6 months. And those kids never left Woking. Right, and we would take them, because we just get a Europass and jump on the ferry and take them to Paris and all over the place, and it was like whang bang, thank you, man. We just came in their life and left. And then Catherine, the oldest, she came and lived with us in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, for a year, and that changed her life. And I introduced her to some friends of mine who were bankers. She went back to London. Through those guys, and got a job at the City of London, became a zillionaire, and bought a ton of real estate before London became the who-she place. Yeah, went over. A message in a bottle. This will be a message on this digital platform, and I would love to hear what you might have to say, although I don't assume that you know what to do, but there should be a beep or something, and then you can try. And thanks for trying. Digital platform. Is that like a salad, or is it more like bed bugs? Well, everything's fine, and I just wanted to call you up and tell you that if we can make it past April 20th, 21st, and 22nd. We can get through those 3 days. I think everything will be hunky-dory. Everyone will be singing, "We're in the money," I think, maybe. And so it'll be fun, right? No, they are definitely out and about, and I've seen them and talked to them, and I've talked to the police. Oh, you've seen some ICE agents? Yeah. I mean, they're in like brand new, SUVs with super tinted things, and they have little knobs around cars. So they have they have TV cameras and all that kind of stuff, and you would never notice unless you knew what to look for. And that's one of the things you look for. And the little blue lights, they're like buried in the car. So you turn them on, they're really bright, etc. But you don't really see them unless you know where to see. So I've seen a number of those guys, and I've seen them, and the way they walk around. I mean, they're wearing JCPenney. They're not Carhartts. They're not stuff they got at Goodwill. The average person or the rich people around here, they wear suits, right? So they don't wear suits. And anyway, so they've been around. I've noticed them, and I've talked to the police when I go to the City Hall to do something, and And I asked them, and they said, "Oh yeah, they're around." And I said, "What's your take on them?" And they said, "They're nothing special. They're not anymore. You know, and our police would forget about it." And so, anyways, that. The other interesting thing, there is a number of Mexican, all the new businesses that have opened in Mountain City and the area in the last 5 years, basically are owned by Hispanic folk. Right? The guys who were working for the drunk.
That's why you're not going to see city police or county sheriffs really going out of their way to help ICE agents because of all the problems they have with meth labs and crazy white people.
Right, exactly.
It turns out very seldom they interact with the Mexican population.
Very,
They're hardworking, keep to themselves, stay low key. If they do break the law, usually they're a little slicker about it. Like, it's the hopped up fucking crazy nut job white people that they're dealing with.
Right, and that's the ones I was babysitting when it was 20 degrees below zero because they were going to freeze to death. And so we have to let these guys. Oh no, we'll steal all our stuff. And I said, okay, I'll babysit because I'm out here and it's 20 degrees below zero and the electricity went off like the frozen popsicle. So I did that, but it really hurt me, for doing.
Opening there over angst about the trade war, over angst about the cost of living, etc., and jeopardize that seat. The more blinking red light this week is the seat in Florida, where to replace Mike Waltz, where some polling, including Republican polling, has shown a very close race, a very too close for comfort. One poll showed about 4 percentage points for the Democrats. So that's a blinking red light for the party.
Darlene, there's also the Wisconsin Supreme Court election in a few days, and that could change the balance of the court in an important swing state. Elon Musk has put $17 million into it. Democrats are spending a lot of money as well. How do you see these races and how it's shaping up for Republicans?
Yeah, as Mario was saying, there is some angst among the Republican establishment about just how these elections are going to go. And one of the things that I think is also playing into some of the angst is some of the backlash that you're seeing.
French fries. Well, what's going to happen, kids, is on Adolf Hitler's birthday, Carrot Head will declare martial law. And then they won't have to worry about the Senate, the Supreme Court, or Congress. And everyone will have to wear a uniform and kiss the ring. And we'll be off to the races. Say goodbye to every amendment to the Constitution from 14th on. Right? People of color will be serfs. Women will be property. You all say, "Oh, how can that be? Oh, it's a good democracy." Well, forget about that. We weren't a democracy ever. Right? MAGA, make America great again. Forget about it. It never was great. It was good for a few people, like the white founding fathers. It was good for them. White men who stole everything from the indigenous people. It was good for them. An extractive, plutocratic state. We have been that since Christopher Columbus. He landed in Hispaniola, which is where Haiti is, Haiti and Dominican Republic. And in less than 10 years, he killed 6 million indigenous people who were there. There was a great, strong, beautiful culture that was based on art and love. They had games for those who had to be competitive, but they didn't really have an army, didn't have guns. And they were very pleasant. So when you have a consumptive empire that exists on taking things, not building things, not loving things, not creating things, not being in co-creation with unconditional forgiveness, that is Jesus Christ, well, then you get what we got. And, it's pleasant. It's got nice wall coverings and interesting, logos. But you also have heavy, dense microfiber forest fire smoke that's filling the air. And that's just the harbinger of, uh-oh, when there's smoke, there's fire. Ah! And the corporate guys are going to love it because they've spent $20 million of FEMA money to clean out around their buildings and their properties and their holdings all around the lake and up there where they have all of the wedding facilities, the Airbnbs. And these fires will just clear out more people and more land that they'll buy at bottom basement price. They bought this whole area starting in 2017. I mean, the people who, like Watoga Mercantile and Lakefront Property and Save the Devil's Booty by laundering drug money real estate company called Lion's Penis or something like that. Anyway, I mean, it's always, the corporate colors are always black and gold. There are a lot of X's in it. Yeah. So here we are, 17 minutes and 57 seconds into this show, and there's nobody here. So I will say, Arrivederci, baby, and have a good time. Like I said, the April 20th, 21st, 23rd, one of those days is Adolf Hitler's birthday, and that's the day they're going to declare martial law. Because you're going to complain about all these people in the street who are upset about their civil rights being infringed upon, and that'll be that. And we'll start to go to war with Greenland first because they're easy, and that might put us into conflict with NATO, Article 5. So that'll be interesting. There will be a nuclear exchange between Russia and everybody else, right? And that'll because the whoopee of the committed Europeans will dump a lot of weapons into Ukraine, and it'll be like the Spanish Civil War. There'll be a lot of have their own brigades and fight, because they want to kill people, and especially Russians. And once Ukraine starts throwing their drones willy-nilly at the urban centers of Russia, Moscow and Leningrad and all the others, and start killing some serious number of citizens, or they will get serious about taking out all the oil, everything oil, right? Everything, right? Just close down Russia's oil and gas, period. Do it. And railroads. And they could if they, put a succinct thing of hitting all that shit. And if, all through NATO, they gave up 100 of their oldish F-16s and put some serious ordnance on them, and then painted them up with Ukraine colors, and then in one shot just kind of flew straight into you know every place Russia is in lands that had been Ukraine. That could be interesting. Uh, uh, the energy of the universe. Oh, that's always fun. Hidden energy of the universe.
There is an energy that emanates from the presence of God that fills the universe.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Force in Star Wars.
Yeah, kind of
You know,
like.
it's in everything, it's through everything, it gives life to everything,
Uh-huh.
right? The name that I would use for it would be the light of Christ. It's unconditional love. It fills the universe, it keeps all the planets in their orbits,
Photonic energy.
keeps our hearts beating, and keeps our bodies functioning, and so on. So there's that. But then in combination with that is this massive intelligence that is within each one of us. And it is the I am, if you will, within each one of us that is, I believe, is
as part of the factory default settings of any human being, which really points to the mind aspect, these narratives and dialogues, these constraints and prisons that I would assert we all arrive with in this dimension of planet Earth and being human is the container in which we get to transcend them. It's not so much something to fix, but really just an illusion and a pretense to circumnavigate and overcome. So as long as we're in the fixing game, we're reinforcing the idea of a problem. I say the only problem you have is believing you have a problem. Right, so it sort of gets very slippery. The you that you're identified with is the obstacle to the very outcome that you're trying to accomplish, right? So this is where it's really fun, but it's also it can be quite sneaky in the way that the mind works, because looking through the lens of constraint, typically the big buckets are some feeling of inadequacy about ourselves, a sense of insecurity about the world that we live in, and then some sense of scarcity as it relates to the world or finances. So those three buckets, they're going to create all sorts of coping strategies, whether they be adaptive or maladaptive, where people become people pleasers and perfectionists. They work hard to overcome inadequacy. They use all sorts of means of trying to find security, whether it be through having someone else in their life, a partner, a spouse, having a consistent paycheck, to overcome that. And then obviously scarcity. I mean, it's the never-ending search for more, right? So we see all of the ways that people compensate, but they're exhausting, because what's actually being confirmed is the idea that there's something wrong in the first place. So yeah, the fixing approach is never going to be fulfilling. My work is more about dissolution. I don't solve problems, I dissolve them. And so the dissolution is the misidentification with any part of us that somehow feels like it's got something wrong with it or it's missing anything. And once we can transcend that, we fall into the very essence of who we are, which inherently contains all the characteristics that the ego or mind is looking for. As part of the factory default settings of any human being, which really points to the mind that have a problem, right? So I have, just as you do, probably somewhere close to 3,000 possible iterations of myself based on my genetic profile. People think they have choice, but their choices are all based on conditioning. We have an illusory form of success, which is very much associated with the external world. I don't solve problems, I dissolve them. And so the dissolution is to the misidentification with any part of us that somehow feels like something wrong with it or it's missing anything. The person seeking freedom is the obstacle to the freedom that already is ever present. Freedom really is the absence of the idea of oneself. I've delineated what I consider to be these 10 primal prisons. And they're really 10 areas of how we relate to life. If we recognize that everything's interconnected, then the whole question of free will or destiny becomes moot. We know now that genetics, depending on your lifestyle, your diet, and your mindset, you're going to activate certain proteins or not, depending on how you relate to life. The only true aspect of genuine belonging is I have, just as you do, probably somewhere close to 3,000 possible iterations of myself based on my genetic profile. People think they have choice, but their choices are all based on conditioning. We have an illusory form of success, which is very much associated with the external world. I don't solve problems, I dissolve them. So the dissolution is...
A lot of people out there profess to have the exact methodologies of how to manifest. What is actually going on in terms of the mechanics behind manifesting as we speak of this? Because manifesting does not take place from the picture we pin on the fridge. It does not come from a place of having a clear idea of the type of the house, type of the partner, and all that. All this, in fact, is only in the domain of thought, and thought only. And we don't manifest from the level of the mind. So this is very important adjustment that needs to be made. The question then rises, where do we manifest from? So this is why I felt compelled to mention the Patanjali Sutras, because in the Vibhuti-padas, the Yoga Sutras speaks to the very, very underlying principles of where the thought itself springs forth and gains its power. So in other words, the Vibhuti-padas were created to help those who are spiritually motivated, spiritually and nothing else, because the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is a spiritual manual. It's not a manual how to become a successful manager. Let's make it very clear. It is geared for those dedicated, committed folk who set themselves free. But the understanding that the underlying nature of desires will continue feeding that psychic content, yogi is given a methodology of how to go to the source of the thought itself at the nuclear level of the formation of the thought, so as to release that energy that is available there, which in essence create the possibility for psychic flare, or why it is called in the first place a vibhuti pada. In other words, why it is translated as extraordinary powers, because there are extraordinary powers. A lot of people out there profess to have the exact methodologies of how to manifest. What is actually going on in terms of the mechanics behind manifesting as we speak of this? Because manifesting does not take place from the picture we pin on the fridge. It does not come from a place of having a clip. You have got to be kidding me!
Yeah. Now anybody can earn 4%.
Is desire and love the same? Is love and desire come together? Well, maybe it will be even in the most troublesome and challenging astrologically times, there's always silver lining. All desires spring forth from the very same source. DNA is a frequency, it's a vibration. I brought this epigenetics here. It's because yogi goes at that level where there are extraordinary powers like how to walk on water, how to fly, levitate. Karmic axis is always formed by Rahu and Ketu, and that's what effectively from planetary perspective really brings complete new set of agendas. Individual here literally as a string can be tuned to vibrate with the frequencies of the music of the spheres, that cosmic resonance with the rest of creation. That's the beauty of Tantra. This is also a nuclear energy we work with. A lot of people out there profess to have the exact methodologies of how to manifest. This is a great delusion and misleading. The question then rises, where do we manifest from? Even in the most troublesome and challenging astrologically times, there's always silver lining. All desires spring forth from the very same source. DNA is a frequency, it's a vibration. I brought this epigenetics here. It's because the human goes at that level where there are extraordinary powers like how to walk on water, how to fly, levitate. Karmic axis is always formed by Rahu and Ketu, and that's what effectively from planetary perspective really brings complete new set of agendas. Individual here literally as a string can be tuned to vibrate with the frequencies of the music of the spheres, that cosmic resonance with the rest of creation. That's the beauty of Tantra. This is also a nuclear energy we work with. A lot of people out there profess to have the exact methodologies of how to manifest. This is a great delusion and misleading. The question then rises, where do we manifest?
I remember standing in front of the Great Pyramid, and he looked at me and he let out this huge sigh of relief, like, finally, there's no tourists. The building actually was so relieved there's nobody there. And I said, I'm sorry, we have to go in. Do you mind if we go in? We're going to bring in a little bit of energy. We're going to do a bit of a ceremony. And then hopefully, if it's okay with you, if we can receive a little bit in return. And yeah, quid pro quo. And wonderful. People also saw things coming out of the stone, just like I did. And people left completely wide-eyed. It's like, that was weird. I said, yeah, it was. The building reacted so favorably to us being there that we appreciated it. But yeah, you can't treat these things as a bunch of rocks. You've got to treat them like, like your favorite grandmother, that kind of thing. Because they do react. And Stonehenge was certainly feeling very sorry for itself these days. Until someone goes in and does it properly. I remember standing in front of the Great Pyramid, and he looked at me and he let out this huge sigh of relief, like, finally, there's no tourists. The building actually was so relieved there's nobody there. And I said, I'm sorry, we have to go in. Do you mind if we go in? We're going to bring in a little bit of energy. We're going to do a bit of a ceremony. And then hopefully, if it's okay with you, if we can receive a little bit in return. And yeah, quid pro quo. And wonderful. People also saw things coming out of the stone, just like I did. And people left completely wide-eyed. It's like, that was weird. I said, yeah, it was. The building reacted so favorably to us being there that we appreciated it. But yeah, you can't treat these things as a bunch of rocks. You've got to treat them like, like your favorite grandmother, that kind of thing. Because they do react. And Stonehenge was certainly feeling very sorry for itself these days. Until someone goes in and does it properly. I remember standing in front of the Great Pyramid, and he looked at me and he let out this huge sigh of relief, like, finally, there's no tourists. The building actually was so relieved there's nobody there. And I said, I'm sorry, we have to go in. We're going to bring in a little bit of energy. We're going to do a bit of a ceremony. And then hopefully, if it's okay with you, if we can receive a little bit in return. And yeah, quid pro quo. And wonderful. People also saw things coming out of the stone, just like I did. And people left completely wide-eyed. It's like, that was weird. I said, yeah, it was. The building reacted so favorably to us being there that we appreciated it. But yeah, you can't treat these things as a bunch of rocks. You've got to treat them like, like your favorite grandmother, that kind of thing. Because they do react. And Stonehenge was certainly feeling very sorry for itself these days. Until someone goes in and does it properly. I remember standing in front of the Great Pyramid, and he looked at me and he let out this huge sigh of relief, like, finally, there's no tourists. The building actually was so relieved there's nobody there. And I'm sorry, we have to go in. Do you mind if we go in? This environment could definitely be used up, but for the time being, it's on the low side of things. We're going to bring in a little bit of...
I am not kidding when I say this strategy, combined with using Gemini, has completely changed how I invest in crypto. For me, I like to set it and forget it like I do with dollar cost averaging my stock market portfolio, but with crypto. This app, Gemini, makes doing that strategy...
During the mid to late afternoon, more than likely near southeast Nebraska, so stay weather. We're back over near Omaha.
We're in an Ahrimanic deception all over the world right now, in the great thrust of ideas and ideals. We've been thrust into a deception. Now, what does that mean, Ahrimanic deception? There's basically two forms of evil in the world that are informing us. I say evil, but we can also use parasitism, or we can also just say like guardrails that are saying, hey, you're off track. Go back in the middle here, because that's really what it is. It's like evil is kind of like a way of getting our soul back on track. This is the Rudolf Steiner perspective, and became my personal perspective. And what ended up happening is I started realizing that right now we're in a polarity of materialism. People count how many yachts they got, how much mansions, how much money's in the bank, this, that. I mean, it's all about the dollars. It's all about the money. And it's also about the scientism worldview, which trusts the science, science this, science that. What about this? Science, science, science. But right there, immediately, when I first came across that stuff, I started realizing science can't quantify nor predict a synchronicity. So there are phenomena that are outside of being able to even be scientifically analyzed, which is very important. And they usually are impregnated with meaning.
risk of severe weather will
We're in an
continue.
Aramonic
Right now,
deception
so
all over the world
Central
right now.
Tennessee,
What we're
Kentucky,
dealing with right now
or
with
even
like
back
the
into
world
central
politics and
Mississippi
everything
or
else is
central
kind of a
Louisiana.
the
We could
last
have a couple
gasp
or
of
even
a bunch of
tornadoes
Luciferic
as we go
Aramonic
into
demons
overnight
trying to
hours
just control,
Sunday into
control
early
freaks,
Monday morning. So this risk will
we're to
not
manipulate and
stop
all this
here
other stuff.
across the
And
Ohio
in
Valley
the midst of all that is an
Now let's talk
awakening
more about the
humanity.
timing
The listeners
for
right now
Sunday.
are like
Sunday
aware
is
of
a
like,
very
okay,
tricky
fast,
day.
okay,
So
I
in the
gotta
morning
be
hours, we'll have a
organic,
little cluster of
okay,
showers and
let's get that in here.
thunderstorms
All these things
moving
that we've
into
been talking
Illinois.
about.
This is going to
And
stabilize
this is
the
an
atmosphere for at
awakening
least
of
a
humanity
little
because
bit.
we're
Then
just
eventually by
starting
lunchtime,
into
there will be
a
a few
Satya
storms
Yuga,
moving
like a
across
light age.
Illinois and Indiana,
Just
mainly
in the beginning
producing
of it.
some large
So
hail and
what that looks
damaging
like to me
winds.
as
Not
an
really much
observer
of
of
a
it for many
tornado
years trying to
instead of
figure
that
out like, what
activity.
is
By
actually
3 to
happening.
4 o'clock,
The
though, we got
kids
a
who
lot
are
more
being
storms
born,
that'll be
the
firing
souls that
off,
are coming
mainly
into
in
the
the
world
lower
now are
Midwest, and
in
there will be
that
some
mode.
discrete
They're
cells
more in
as
the
well.
light mode.
This
They're
is
not
the environment
worried
where we
about
could be
demonic
talking about
forces.
strong
They're
and
just here to do
long-track
what they're going to do.
tornadoes if a
So
supercell
light
is
is
able to
coming into
organize.
the world
If we
in
don't have much
larger and
organization
larger
here,
and
we are talking
larger
about a more
amounts.
significant.
That's kind of radio days. Calamity on the doorstep. Masturbation on the rise. Oops. Nobody wants to talk about masturbation. Look at the war in Ukraine. If that ain't masturbation, I don't know what is. About the Gaza Strip, that's pretty masturbatory. And everything going on in Africa. Woo. I would say, you know, I got rid of AID. I mean, what Neon Husk and Carrot Head are doing, again, you have to realize that they're morons, right? So they have no idea what they're doing, but their ego and their hubris is like through the roof. So there you go. And you have to understand that God manifests everything. So all of this has been on the, oh, it's going to happen anytime soon scale, and empires fall. And when they do, they usually fall like that. And America has been, pretty much on the slate of failure since it began, since the War of 1812. Pretty much. There's, one catastrophe after another, and it's all what it, meant to be. Now, a lot of people die, a lot of chaos and conflict, just like, look at the Gaza Strip. That's what the planet is headed for. Not at the hand of a devil made me do it. I don't think so. You have to realize that light and dark, are just reflections of each other. And you're supposed to be that little dot on either side of the snake goddess. So, I mean, it seems to me pretty self-evident that what's going on is we could have gone on like Biden world for another 20, 30, 50, 100 years, but, pretty much same amount of people in Gaza would have died, same amount of people in Ukraine would have died, same amount of people in Africa are going to die. But by pulling all the plugs out of the servers, the dynamic of what's going on not be hidden from the hidden hand. No, they won't see it clearly. No, it'll be hidden from you and I. I mean, not going to be taken out. So right now, I played that little weather thing for him because that guy, he's a pretty good young, aspiring weather guy, but he doesn't have all those computers, the satellites, the balloons going up in the air. That's all done by NOAA. Take them out of the equation. He won't have that information. He won't be able to do his job, and he will have to pay because NOAA will become a for-profit corporation. It'll be sold pennies on the dollar to Elon Musk. He'll put it on an app on his X masturbatory because we're going to have a little solar something, and every a large you know, EMF will be distributed over North America, and every silicon chip, pretty much the United States will be fried. Your car won't work, TV won't work, internet won't work, electricity won't work, refrigerator won't work, your water won't work, you won't flush the toilet, you won't be able to drink water, you'll be able to experience what gas is, except if you're super rich, where you have, a corporate military taking care of you. But that won't last too long. Because all those guys that they hired, um, you know, yes.
I'm going to lay out the quarter. Tobacco sends your prayers to heaven, and it's immediate, and they're listened to. This idea that our soil is related to our consciousness is massive. Every human being has a superpower of some sort. It's a reality distortion effect that every human being has based on the consciousness. There's basically two forms of evil in the world that are informing us. With the Ahrimanic times that we were in, or the Ahrimanic deception, came this idea that we can beat Mother Nature at her own game. Part of what's going on here is we're in some kind of a simulation of some sort. There's very good evidence that Jesus was at a scene. They had an encampment near Qumran, right on the Dead Sea. Last year, I did 70 days of water fasting. It's crazy the power of it. It's truly hacking the matrix, in my opinion. Rudolf Steiner, also Sri Yukteswar, and Yogananda. Those guys basically said that the Kali Yuga, the Age of Darkness, ended in 1899. Light is coming into the world in larger and larger and larger amounts. I'm going to say something that's illegal. I'm going to lay out the core of it. Tobacco sends your prayers to heaven, and it's immediate, and they're listened to. This idea that our soil is related to our consciousness is massive. Every human being has a superpower of some sort. It's a reality distortion effect that every human being has based on the consciousness. There's basically two forms of evil in the world that are informing us. With the Ahrimanic times that we were in, or the Ahrimanic deception, came this idea that we can beat Mother Nature at her own game. Part of what's going on here is we're in some kind of a simulation of some sort. There's very good evidence that Jesus was at a scene. They had an encampment near Qumran, right on the Dead Sea. Last year, I did 70 days of water fasting. It's crazy the power of it. It's truly hacking the matrix, in my opinion. Rudolf Steiner, also Sri Yukteswar, and Yogananda. Those guys basically said that the Kali Yuga, the Age of Darkness, ended in 1899. Light is coming in larger and larger amounts. I'm going to say something that's illegal. I'm going to lay out the core of it. Tobacco sends your prayers to heaven, and it's immediate, and they're listened to. This idea that our soil is related to our consciousness is massive. Power of some sort. It's a reality distortion effect that every human being has based on the consciousness. There's basically two forms of evil in the world that are informing us. With the Ahrimanic times that we were in, or the Ahrimanic deception, came this idea that we can beat Mother Nature at her own game. Part of what's going on here is we're in some kind of a simulation of some sort. There's very good evidence that Jesus was at a scene. They had an encampment near Qumran, right on the Dead Sea. Last year, I did 70 days of water fasting. It's crazy the power of it. It's truly hacking the matrix, in my opinion. And also Sri Yukteswar and Yogananda. Those guys basically said that the Kali Yuga, the Age of Darkness, ended in 1899. Light is coming into the world in larger and larger and larger amounts. I'm going to say something that's illegal. I'm going to lay out the core of it. Tobacco sends your prayers to heaven, and it's immediate, and they're listened to. This idea that our soil is related to our consciousness is massive. Every human being has a superpower of some sort. It's a reality distortion effect that every human being has based on the consciousness. There's basically two forms of evil in the world that are informing us. With the Ahrimanic times that we were in, or the Ahrimanic deception, came this idea that we can beat Mother Nature at her own game. Part of what's going on here is we're in some kind of a simulation of some sort. There's very good evidence that Jesus was at a scene. They had an encampment near Qumran, right on the Dead Sea. Last year, I did 70 days of water fasting. It's crazy the power of it. It's truly hacking the matrix, in my opinion. Rudolf Steiner, also Sri Yukteswar, and Yogananda. Those guys basically said that the Kali Yuga, the Age of Darkness, ended in 1899. Light is coming in larger and larger amounts. I'm going to say something that's illegal. I'm going to lay out the core of it. Tobacco sends your prayers to heaven, and it's immediate, and they're listened to. This idea that our soil is related to our consciousness is massive. Every human being has a superpower of some sort. It's a reality distortion effect that every human being has based on the consciousness. There's basically two forms of evil in the world that are informing us. With the Ahrimanic times that we were in, or the Ahrimanic deception, came this idea to beat Mother Nature at her own game. Part of what's going on here is we're in some kind of a simulation of some sort. There's very good evidence that Jesus was at a scene. They had an encampment near Qumran, right on the Dead Sea. Last year, I did 70 days of water fasting. The power of it, it's truly hacking the matrix, in my opinion. Rudolf Steiner, also Sri, Yukteswar, and Yogananda. Those guys basically said that the Kali Yuga, the Age of Darkness, ended in 1899. Light is coming into the world in larger and larger and larger amounts. I'm going to say something that's illegal. I'm going to lay out the core of it. Tobacco sends your prayers to heaven, and it's immediate, and they're listened to. This idea that our soil is related to our consciousness is massive. Every human being has a superpower of some sort. It's a reality distortion effect that every has based on the consciousness. There's basically two forms of evil in the world that are informing us. With the Ahrimanic times that we were in, or the Ahrimanic deception, came this idea that we can beat Mother Nature at her own game. Part of what's going on here is we're in some kind of a scene of some sort. There's very good evidence that Jesus was at a scene. They had an encampment near Qumran, right on the Dead Sea. Last year, I did 70 days of water fasting. It's crazy, the power of it. It's truly hacking the matrix, in my opinion. Rudolf Steiner, Sri, Yukteswar, and Yogananda. Those guys basically said that the Kali Yuga, the Age of Darkness, ended in 1899. Light is coming into the world larger and larger and larger amounts. I'm going to say something that's illegal. I'm going to lay out the core of it. Tobacco sends your...
If you feel distant from the Lord, it's probably because you haven't been reading your Bible. But what if you hate reading, or you really struggle?
If you find your path to your soul through the power of love, of that what makes you feel powerful, amazing, significant in what is life every day, unconditionally, then very soon you become a secluded hermit, like a yogi, like somebody who is practicing because he solely is in a relationship with God himself. And God himself is not a scripture. God himself is right over here and now. It's omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent. It's all here and now. If you want to experience it, you have the right to do so. It's all there. But you have to go out of the basket. You have to go out of your conditioning, out of the way you thought everything goes. Because that doesn't relate to your thinking. It relates to a deep being, power of purpose. The life itself, unconditional love, flowing through you. This is also the ultimate of meditation, is observing and becoming one with oneness, with the omnipresence, with the here and now. Then you become omnipotent. Then you will know the omniscience to know your soul. Trauma happens in a moment. And when it happens, we have not the time to work it out, to process, because we have a physical trauma at that moment, a bomb blast. I felt attracted to the cold water. As soon as I went in, I knew this is a doorway into the depth that made me able to connect with my soul. God has provided us with all the tools to bring back holiness when we are broken. The life force, the omnipresent, the ephemeral. When you breathe it in, then you will become that. You become one with it all. And then we become the masters over our brain functioning.
God's actually dreaming itself into existence in order to explore all of its potentials. And that's what all beings are, is they're a character in the dream of God that's having such a profound virtual experience of individuality. Without individuality, there is no unity. You can't have a unity of nothing, just like you
can't have a bicycle wheel without spokes. So each individual is like a spoke in a wheel, and the unity is the hub that holds them all together and the rim that holds them all together. The alchemists realized when they were doing various chemical experiments that, for example, if they were in a bad mood, it would change the outcome of the experiment.
Yep. Particle or wave, right? Which are you? Where am I at? I'm in a good place. I'm in a happy zone because God and Jesus are with me at all times, no matter what happens. You know, I have really bad arthritis. I have really bad neuropathy. I want to do open heart surgery. They want to place all my joints. But I take it slow. Right? And whenever I die, well, I've had a good practice. I've died 7 times already. A lot of people say, well, you got 2 more to go, you know? And so I'm there. I have a nice new sweetie in my life, which is nice. And she comes and visits me when she wants. She knows I'm pretty much there all the time. Pretty much after 4 p.m., I'm there. That's usually when she shows up, a little bit after 4 p.m. Then sometimes we go up and do stuff. We go up to, to Bristol or to Johnson City or to Boone and get a nice hotel room and a hot shower. Ooh, showers are great, especially if you got somebody to share it with. And what else? She calls me her lucky rabbit's foot because we go to Bristol and she always seems to win. So that's my report. Remember, we get past April 20, 21, 22, we'll be on the other side of it. Right? That's Adolf Hitler's birthday, and I think we will have martial law because all the executive orders that have been signed are leading to that point, and they are, basically ignoring what the judges say. That's why we had the judges. We had the lower case, the middle case, the upper case, and then the Supreme Court judge, right? And so they're just pushing it on to Supreme because they want the Supremes to say yes to everything Donald wants. He can do that, but that doesn't mean it will work out for him. It'll be good for, because it'll cause the rapidity of the outcome, right? We could stay this off for another 50, 60, 70 years, but it'll be worse and worse. But it's like ripping a Band-Aid off. We let schmuck and douche and all the rest of the puddings in the pie. Just that putting an attack on Facebook. That was good. Some guy in Ohio in his mother's basement could have packed into on that conversation. And then made some pretty quick gilder by passing that on to the naughty and nefarious. And so and the naughty and the nefarious are in charge, so it's, they already know. So at some point, when the United States is deemed to really need, the plug to be pulled, over there in the Mideast where we have 3 aircraft carrier groups, a Gerald Ford class super aircraft carrier and 2 what used to be called super carriers, Nimitz class, are there. About 5,000 aircraft, about 30,000 guys. And then you add on the rest of the protective net of destroyers and submarines. You have close to $1 trillion worth of hardware. Close to. And we have boots on the ground also. So we have close to 150,000 boots on the ground, souls to be lost, blood to be spilled of our own. So can you imagine how Carrot Head and the other pickle poke folk in the cabinet will respond to sinking and the death and destruction of all that gilder and blood, right? You think 9/11 was whoa, we'll nuke everybody. And that's exactly what the hidden hand wants. He wants a dropping of the population by at least half. So we go from 8 billion to 3.4 billion people. That's just happy. Enough room for the rich folk and everyone else is a serf, right? I mean, we're already in that position. It's just a little more crowded. And they don't need the mindless leaders anymore. Right? They got AI and robots. And that's who will be working in the factories. Downey goes, "Oh, we're bringing all our manufacturing back here." Yeah, so the rich can get richer and the poor will be dead. So then we'll have, the Terminator. So good luck with that. That's why I live out in the woods, and I only, come and visit you guys every now and then, right? Because it's gets hard. I mean, the event and hurricane that was man-made, space-based, and don't believe a word I say. Everything I say is just a cartoon show away. Right? Remember Saturday Night Live? We used to have a guy made the little movies, and it would start Cartoon Playhouse. That's exactly where we're at, Cartoon Playhouse, right? The dog would eat the side of reality and pull it away and come back with my show, right? So that's where we're at right now. So listening to the radio, yep. So anyway, I'm off to the non-disclaimed universe, and I'm going to check in with the old ladies and their pearls and the clipboards, and we'll see what happens with all those operations. I may or may not do it. I'm not in really any great pain, so all I really have to do is breathe in that prana and feel my body healing already. Breathe out the toxins. Breathe in the prana. Breathe out the toxins. Feel that love inside you.
strike a U.S. aircraft carrier? The USS Eisenhower Strike Group has saved countless civilian merchant sailors in the Red Sea since deploying in October. Daily, aircraft from the Ike and her strike group intercept Houthi drones and anti-ship missiles, ensuring free international shipping and sustaining. Here's Houthi spokesman Yahya Saraya.
والقوة الصاروخية وسلاح الجو المسير في القوات المسلحة اليمنية عملية عسكرية.
Captain Chris Chowda Hill, CO of the Eisenhower, responded, "I don't know what that dude said, but we're going to continue with Taco Tuesday as planned." Did the Houthis strike a U.S. aircraft carrier? The USS Eisenhower Strike...
What the hell's the matter with you?
Nothing an honest answer to can't cure. Tell me about yourself. What do you do for a living?
What do you care what I do for a living?
I just watched you negotiate a deal with a gang of gangbangers.
What you saw was my business. Well, I don't mean it like it's none of your business. I mean it's my business. Literally. I do custom installs. When I put in high-end units, I clone the vehicle's wireless key code so I can steal the stereos back and resell them.
You're a thief?
You do what you gotta do, right?
What I gotta do is understand why Katerina Rostova would pay to cure you of a fatal blood disease.
Constance paid for that. She was my friend.
Of course. Constance Drucker. What do you say we take a little drive so you can tell me more about dear old Constance?
We heard Katerina fighting with a man in the hallway. Mom and Dad ran out of the apartment to help, but the man, he had a gun, shot my parents, gave her a chance to get away. A month later, she approached me on my way to school. She knew she couldn't make up for my loss. She swore she would do everything in her power to look out for me. What the hell's the matter with you?
He's not dying alone. You can do what you like to me. I'm going to be with him. So am I.
Handmaidens.
It's okay.
He's not dying.
I'm not. But you're going to be someone else. It doesn't matter who. Because every single one of you is fantastic.
It's time. Here we go again. What's happening? Could you pull?
Could I?
What? Can you?
What do you mean?
Pull. Just pull each way. I don't know. It feels different this time. Ow! Oh. What? You're me.
I mean, I think I really, really need. This is why I don't know. So good. Now, someone tell me what the hell is going on here?
He's not dying alone.
So, you want to kill him? You want to kill him? I want to kill him. What about you, Mr. Vic?
I'm going to kill you.
Too bad, of course, yeah. But it looks like we have ourselves a genuine conundrum. A quandary, if you will. A real-life dilemma. So, I thought we play a game. One hand. Serena decides who lives, and who does not.
Alright, what's the buy? More than you can afford. Yeah, I'm one bullet away from being a very rich man.
What, that one? 5 card draw. Dead man's hand, Mr. Vic.
Well, don't gamble. Let's see. 4 9s and a 4.
Most impressive. Oh, your flash. Pretty good for a nobody.
Thank you.
A blind man, a guy with a dog, and John Vic walk into a bar and take a seat at the table. Does that sound the beginning of a stupendous joke or a most profitable opportunity? One thinks he can serve his way out. One thinks he can buy his way out. And one thinks he can kill his way out. Each of them all thinks that they have the winning hand. But what they fail to realize is that the moment they took a seat at the table, they had already lost.
Let me guess. Bible kind? Yeah. 又係一條仆街唔家產。Yeah，仆街唔家產。
Just so you know, Peter wasn't personal. Now maybe. So, you?
So Tunguska, force of about a 15 megaton hydrogen bomb. That piece is estimated to have been about 150 feet diameter. That thing descended through the atmosphere, was moving so fast that the atmosphere in effect didn't have time to get out of the way. As a result of that explosion, over 820 square miles of old-growth taiga forest was just utterly obliterated and flattened. Under the epicenter of that explosion, about 200 square miles were just incinerated to nothing. So Tunguska 1908 exploded 5 miles up in the atmosphere with the force of about a fifth.
I'm here to negotiate on behalf of the Pike Syndicate. Before you get any ideas, I've got back shooters too. A spice move from Mos Espa, and all this can be avoided. Now, what do you propose then?
I will only negotiate with the head of the Pike Syndicate.
You mean the one that massacred your Tuscan family and blamed it on a speed bike gang? You know it's true.
Boba.
Let's do this right here, right now.
Not now. You pick when.
I can take him.
You're emotional.
I can take him.
We need to adjust. You'll have your moment.
Tell your clients.
You're going soft in your old age. I'm here to negotiate.
I have never been more excited to live in the state of Tennessee.
Meeting someone here at Nyla Harbor. I'll grab a draft when you got a minute.
Let me guess. First date? Where you choose not to show?
Oh, no. Right, first day here. No offense.
None taken.
I am meeting someone though. My TO. Training groups. Rookie LAPD.
You're a rookie?
Yeah. Midlife career change.
Oh, good for you.
Thanks. Happened to see her. Did you? Someone probably just checking her watch, looking annoyed.
Maybe. I don't really pay attention to people sitting at the bar. So why the change?
Sometimes life just gives you a nudge. For me, it was divorce, my son moving off to college, and a mealtime trip to the bank.
Makes sense. Wife left you, kid left you. Nothing like a gun in hand to make you feel powerful again.
No, that's not why at all. But there may be some other customers that can use your help. You're her, you're my TO.
Took you long enough.
Wow, okay. By the game. Meeting someone here at night.
Our galaxy is the aliens' graveyard.
Better to kill them now and get it over with. Senator. Torpedo hit. Once again, please.
It is Enterprise. We fired.
That is not possible. All weapons visually accounted for. Sir, an ancestor of mine maintained that if you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. It means that if we cannot have fired those torpedoes, someone else did. They didn't fire on themselves, and there are no other ships present. There was an enormous neutron energy surge. Not from us.
Neutron surge that big could only be produced by another ship.
Cronus 1?
Too far away. Very near us. Possibly beneath us. If there were a ship beneath us, the Klingons would have seen it.
A bird of prey.
A bird of prey. Cloaked? But a prey cannot fire when she's cloaked. All things being equal, Mr. Scott, I would agree. However, things are not equal. This one can.
If there was a ship underneath us, surely the assassins beamed aboard from that vessel, not Enterprise. What are we looking for, sir?
Lieutenant.
2 pairs of gravity boots.
Throughout the galaxy is the...
Hey, Dwight. Meet Medhat. Nice to meet you. His son, Ahanu.
In exchange for fronting a wind farm what was not considered Quad-Paw Nation territory, we want 20% of all energy generated to be diverted to travel areas where it's most needed.
Reasonable.
We also want 20% of all your hydroponic wheat profits.
Not reasonable. We came up here because we thought we had a deal.
Growing marijuana on our land, we deserve a share.
I think we ought to push the pause button. What the fuck do you think? With 5 10K wind turbines, we're looking at optimally, and I do mean optimally, 750,000 kilowatt hours per year. Minus the quad tax, we've got 60 for our own use. It's pricey but doable. Enough to fuel our other interests. I can make it work. Now, Freddie, I know you want 20%, but how about this? 10%, and you get 2% a year for the next 5 years, and then your whole employment. Very nice. Deal. Hey, Dwight. Meet Medhat. Nice to meet you. His son, Ahanu.
In exchange for fronting...
I have never been more excited.
You appear to be wearing the wrong beret. I don't think I am. Every single one of these men smells of alcohol. They've just attended the funeral of 21 comrades. We'd have taken a drink by now anyway. And the reason I personally object to the maroon beret is that it makes us look the same as every other parachute regiment in the British Army. As this parade has probably already proven to you, sir, we are slightly drunk, opinionated, and borderline insubordinate delinquents. And our unique ability is to operate behind enemy lines without regulation in any way we see fit, inflicting the maximum amount of damage on an unsuspecting enemy without being directed by central command. If I hadn't made that wee speech to your face when I had the chance, sir, I would have regretted it. I cannot afford regrets.
Men like these should not be ordered to simply run at machine gun. It is an abuse of their courage. You have my personal permission to carry on wearing your sound common just so long as you keep winning. I wait further orders, Major Petty May.
You appear to be wearing the wrong beret. Actually, I don't think I am. Every single one of these men smells of alcohol. They've just attended the funeral of 21 comrades. We'd have taken a drink by now anyway. And the reason I personally object to the maroon beret is that it makes us look the same as every other parachute regiment in the British Army. It is probably already proven to you, sir, we are slightly drunk, opinionated, and borderline insubordinate delinquents. And our unique ability is to operate behind enemy lines without regulation in any way we see fit, inflicting the maximum on an unsuspecting enemy without being directed by central command. If I hadn't made that wee speech to your face when I had the chance, sir, I would have regretted it. I cannot afford regrets.
Men like these should not be ordered to simply run at machine gun. It is an abuse of their courage. You have my personal permission to carry on wearing your sound common just so long as you keep winning. I wait further orders, Major Petty May.
You appear to be wearing...
She was right about you. Said you were very dangerous. Caller. Seems to me I'm not going to survive this either way. This may seem ironic considering the circumstances, but I abhor violence. I only resort to it at times of extreme necessity. So believe me when I say this is both extreme and necessary. Caller. She said you do this. She said I do what exactly? Underestimate her.
Boss.
It's me. Hate to leave this on your machine, but there's something you ought to know. Your friends, Black Fella and the Man in the Hat, Reddington, they're here, and I didn't go down without a fight. You told me if you ever figured out you're still alive, he'd come at you full bore. Well, lock and lady, your war has come. She was right about you. So
I don't think you've been completely honest with me.
Know this, son of Cole. You and I, we fight for the same cause, the protection of this world. From this day forward, you can count me as your ally. If you return the items you have taken from Jane.
Stolen.
Borrowed. Of course you can have equipment back. You're going to need it to continue your research.
Would you like to see the bridge we spoke of?
Sure.
Wait, I need to debrief you. I'm done. I'm done. You haven't gone, sir. Then we are stranded. I'm down! If you can hear me, we need you now! I'm down! We need you now!
I don't think you've been completely honest with me. No. Name's Conrad Harrigan, family man. And if you cross my family, well, you'd better pray. We don't ask, we take. And when someone forgets their place, I've got a man for that. Broke himself.
What is this, the Taliban?
You can wish you are. Bloodland, new series streaming March 30th on Paramount Plus.
The Inspector General reported that the error rate in Social Security was less than 1%, and it was an error rate that you wanted to improve upon. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. But in his State of the Union address, listened to by millions and millions of Americans, President Trump suggested that, quote, millions and millions, end of quote, of Social Security checks are going out to people who are between the ages of 140 and 360 years old. Millions and millions of checks. You've just acknowledged what is true, is that the error rate in Social Security is less than 1%, 99 point whatever of the people who get their checks paid into the system and deserve those checks. So what I want to ask you is, do you think that President Trump was just expressing an outrageous lie, which I happen to believe, trying to undermine Social Security, or was he just grossly uninformed about the reality?
I think what the president was representing, which further was represented again and proven to be accurate, is that there were millions of Social Security records that did not have people deceased.
Let's not play with words. What you have just acknowledged is that in 2024, the Social Security Administration paid out over 99 point whatever percent to people eligible. The error rate was less than 1%. Millions and millions and millions of people, 200 or 300 years of age, did not get checks. Is that true?
What I represented was that a 1% error rate in a mission critical function like Social Security is way too high.
I agree.
And
excuse me, I don't have much time. Sorry.
Sorry.
President said millions and millions of people. You're saying, and you're right, less than 1%. You want to improve it? You're right. Let's do it. President was lying. And what he was trying to do was undermine the foundations of Social Security by saying the system is out of control. Inspector General reported that the error rate in Social Security was less than 1%, and it was an error rate that you wanted to improve upon. Am I right?
I am Bo-Katan Kryze. Which one of you is in charge? Hello?
This is going nowhere.
I am Mandalorian Din Djarin, friend of Ugnaught Kuiil. You will answer our questions and help us with our tasks. I have spoken. We were engaged to hunt down and eliminate the malfunctioning droids.
There are no such droids. Citizens have been harmed by these malfunctioning machines. This is not the case. I have spoken.
We're not in any way suggesting that your work is to blame. The stories of Ugnaughts' skill with smithing droids are legendary. We know that Ugnaughts are considered the hardest working species in the galaxy. We, like you, have been engaged with a task to perform. We will investigate the dangerous incidents. We would appreciate your help.
Here are the locations of the droids you seek.
Thank you, and your debt. I have spoken.
What was that?
I've spent time with Ugnaughts. There's a particular way to communicate with them. Accusing their work of malfunctioning is an insult.
I am Bo-Katan Kryze.
does this or does that, or how the Israeli issue relates to this issue or that issue. It's just sort of ruled out of court. And the end result is people end up speaking in oblique ways about the issue at hand. The level of dishonesty in our society is really just stunning. It's not just Donald Trump, though. I mean, the problem is bigger than Trump. Right? There's something fundamentally wrong in this country. It goes back, many, many years in many administrations. This is not to defend Trump for 1 second, and one could argue that what they're doing with ICE now is, a giant leap forward in terms of our dissent. But nevertheless, the problem is very deep here.
Again, Donald is just a symptom. He's not the problem, right? And as I said, get ready for April 20th, 21, 22, 23. It's right in there is Adolf Hitler's birthday, which is a great day to declare martial law. Hitler took Germany and the Weimar Republic, the most democratic political entity in Europe at the time. And within 30 days, the Reichstag, their Capitol building, was burnt to the ground. They passed a thing called the Enabling Act, which was kind of very similar to what we had after 9/11, which was called the Patriot Act. And that broke down many of the constraints because within days they brought forth the Nuremberg laws that were based almost totality on America, Jim Crow, right? Actually, the Nazis thought Jim Crow was so hyenas at certain times that they didn't imbibe a number of things that were going on in America. So that's what we're looking at. And any person of color, any female, will be turned into either a serf or property, right? So because we're already slaves. We've never stopped being slaves, right? And you don't have to declare war or be violent or any of those things to stop this. All you have to do is pray. All you have to do is go into state, bring love into your heart, be in a dialogue with God's unconditional love through conscious intent. And the doorway into that intent is serving as Jesus' doula, right at the door, right? So that's what we got going on. That's what you've got to face up to. I don't know what more I can say, Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. I am your Sensei Alba, the druid, to tell you the stories within the griot way of shamanism. And, you can do whatever the heck you want, because it does not matter, The day you're born, the only thing you can depend on is you're going to die. And not your soul, your bag of water, right? Your mud puppet. So get the most out of it, meaning see why we're here, experience life, Don't be scared of it, And as you get older, appreciate it. Meaning I said on my front lawn, it connects me, my feet go onto earth and I plug in, right? That's my chi. I'm grounded, right? I breathe in the clean air. Well, now it's a little forced, fiery, smoky right now, but not as bad as it could be. And things can always be worse than they are. So, where is Cliff?
And
It is incredible how many things you wrote about, things that were undeniably, even obviously true, but that most Americans simply would never, ever believe. So take the fraudulent accounting at General Electric, something you warned about for more than a decade.
Well, no major threat. They do attack shipping lines in the Red Sea region. They are, by their declaration, aligned with the resistance in Palestine, and they've been attacking ships. Is this a major security threat to the United States? No, of course not. I think it was said, if I heard correctly, and I am halfway around the world in China right now, but it was to warn the Iranians. So this was another proxy of a proxy war. So it's a group in the White House deciding, let's bomb some people to send a message. Fundamental U.S. national security. I think the key for me is very basic. We've discussed it repeatedly. The war in the Middle East will continue. It will spread. It's in Gaza. It's in the West Bank. It's in Lebanon. It's in Syria. It's in Yemen. It will spread as long as there is no resolution of the terrible injustice in Palestine. Right. The whole idea is that Israel illegally and unjustly and vigorously occupies Palestinian land. It leads to resistance. In response to the resistance, Netanyahu declares war on basically the entire Middle East and most of the rest of the world these days, including, I should mention, American universities. So he's at war because anybody, any force, any group that opposes Israel's brutality in Palestine is then an object of the Israeli war machine. The sad part is we are the Israeli war machine. Israel runs, the U.S. government runs, the White House runs that group that was intercepted or caught in communication by the Atlantic magazine reporter. They're run by Israel. They're serving Israel. They're doing this for Israel. And that means that the United States is in war in places it shouldn't be in. No, we should not be in war in Yemen, for heaven's sake, in war in Syria.
Our weather pattern is going to be very active as we go into early April with significant severe weather outbreaks, a crippling ice storm, and some heavy snow. And we're going to be walking you through the weather pattern here in today's video. So make sure to subscribe to my channel, like the video by giving it a thumbs up down below, and also share this video with friends, family, and on social media with anybody. All right, y'all. Welcome to the show. Last day, or I should say last show that I'm going to do on vacation here. Should be back in the studio next week. Having said that, I'm not quite sure if Crystal and I were able to scrape together a Crystal, Kyle, and friends this week because we're on vacation. We tried to get in contact with a few people we wanted to talk to and haven't really heard back. So not quite sure yet if there's going to be a KKF this week. But nonetheless, I am here right now in order to break down the news for you. We got a lot of stuff to talk about today. So in just a second, our worst fears are coming true. The Social Security Administration is collapsing right in front of our eyes. And it is a devastating thing to see. So we'll talk about that. We also have a new executive order from Trump, and basically it lays out in detail how Trump plans to rig and steal future elections. So yet again, 5-alarm fire with this administration. We'll break that down for you. Then we have our story about how lawyers are refusing to represent Trump opponents. Justice is collapsing in front of our eyes as well. Florida is trying to bring back child labor. Trump is trying to abolish FEMA, so that would be all disaster relief gone. MAGA is shattering the sycophant meter, and they're openly saying war with Mexico is on the table in the clearest terms possible. And then also we have a story
criticize Trump on social media get deported. These are the rules that they want to set up for any and all immigrants, both documented and undocumented. So we have all that and more. Everybody do me a big favor. Please subscribe to the channel. As you know, that helps out massively and costs you nothing. And much love, of course, to all of you who support this show on Patreon. Could not do it without you guys. You guys are real ones for supporting on Patreon. If you'd like to support, that link is below. Remember, this is real independent media, not fake independent media. Never had a conversation with an advertiser or a corporation. Never talked to a billionaire or a government or anything like that. Very proud of that fact, proud of what we built here, and we're trying to keep it moving. So, all right, let's go ahead and dive into it. Let's start with this. So Jeff Stein, the economics reporter, chief economics reporter for the Washington Post, comes out and says the following. Social Security in turmoil. The Social Security Administration website crashed 4 times in 10 days this month. 4 times the website crashed in 10 days. Service a mess following Musk-led cuts. They're trying to eliminate that completely too, by the way. No more Social Security phone service, which is nearly half of all of the attempts of seniors to get in contact with Social Security. They do it over the phone. Why? Because they're old. They don't want to use the internet. Some of them have a difficult time getting to a Social Security office.
Well, the main difference between Trump and the European Union is that Trump has an idea regarding what he wants with this conflict. We can argue whether it's good or bad, but that's his view. He wants to get rid of this conflict. It's a liability for him, and he wants to get disengaged of this conflict. It's not his conflict. This is something that was started by his predecessor. He thinks it was a bad policy, it was bad investment, and in addition to that, it led nowhere. And today, nobody has a sensible solution in sight. Therefore, the best way for him is to force. The best way for him is to force the 2 main parties to sit together and to settle the question. That's what he sees. But he has an advantage as regarding to the Europeans. He has an idea. He has a strategy. He has an objective. If you look on the other side, the Europeans, they triggered the conflict. They helped to fuel the conflict.
While Americans are paying more for Japanese cars, is Japan preparing a financial blow that could shake the U.S. economy? U.S.-Japan auto trade war. The U.S. has continuously raised tariffs on automobile parts imported from Japan, particularly in the electric vehicle industry. A 25% tariff on auto parts has driven up the prices of Toyota, Honda, and Nissan cars in the U.S., causing these models to lose their major competitive edge advantage in the market, according to the latest report from the Japan Automobile Manufacturers Association. Japanese car sales in the U.S. have dropped by about 7% in the first quarter of 2025. Meanwhile, U.S. automakers such as Ford and General Motors are attracting more customers due to government protection policies. This price increase not only reduces consumers' purchase. Canada, a longtime energy partner, has shut down the $103 billion oil export pipeline to the U.S., leaving Washington unable to respond in time. Canada stops supplying oil and gas to the U.S. Canada, the largest energy supplier to the U.S., shocked Washington with it.
Canada has gone elbows up and over the board, and Donald Trump is trembling now. Donald Trump is threatening both Europe and Canada. If you band together, Canada and Europe, band together, Canada and Europe, I'm going to do more tariffs on both of you. Donald Trump posts, if the European Union works with Canada in order to do economic harm to the USA, large-scale tariffs
far larger than currently planned will be placed on them both in order to protect the best friend that each of those two countries has ever had, says a sociopathic abuser. Meanwhile, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney says it is clear the U.S. is no longer a reliable partner. The era of close ties between Canada and the U.S. is officially over, Prime Minister Carney said in a powerful speech yesterday. Here's from Prime Minister Carney's speech. The old relationship we had with the U.S. is gone officially. Play the clip.
How do you feel about the black community receiving reparations?
I'm against that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, why so?
So here's my view, and I want to hear yours.
It's gone officially. Play the clip.
The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperation, is over. What exactly the United States does next is unclear. But what is clear is that we, as Canadians, have agency. We have power. We are masters in our own home. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous. We can control our destiny. We can give ourselves much more than any foreign government, including the United States, can ever take away. We can deal with this crisis best by building our strength right here at home. It will take hard work. It will take steady and focused determination from governments, from businesses, from labor, from Canadians. We will need to dramatically reduce our reliance on the United States. We will need to pivot our trade relationships elsewhere. And we will need to do things previously thought impossible at speeds we haven't seen in generations.
Powerful words right there, and Maple Midas through and through. Charlie Angus. We welcome you, Charlie Angus, member of Canada's Parliament. Hey, Donald Trump is threatening Canada again. He's imposing 25% tariffs across the world on auto. And he's saying, Charlie, if Canada and Europe join forces, something super serious, extra bad is going to happen. Your response?
Well, something extra bad has already happened. It's happened to the American economy. I mean, flights from Canada to the U.S. in the busiest month of the year dropped 70% when Canada is the number one market for U.S. tourism. So it's not just, the hundreds of thousands of jobs directly in tourism. There's so many knock-on effects that are being felt. And then when you do arbitrary detentions and pulling out people out of airport lines and sending them off to El Salvador, well, now you...
Welcome to your ultimate pit stop, Piston Pundit. Gearheads and policy wonks alike get their dose of high-octane automotive insight. Today, we're taking a detour into the fast lane of international trade, where engine blocks meet diplomatic blockades. What started as a brewing tariff war between Mexico and the U.S. has turned into a masterclass in strategy, starring none other than Mexico's newly minted president, Claudia Sheinbaum. She didn't just dodge a trade wreck, she shifted gears and took control of the road. And while some might have expected her to stall, Sheinbaum pulled a maneuver so smooth, it left even Canada stunned in the rear view. Let's break down the key shifts, the behind...
All right, it is just before 6 p.m. here in South Beach, the busiest weekend historically of all of spring break in the month of March. You can see these railings here. We're on Washington Avenue, where it says no parking from Wednesday night through Monday morning. That is for the two busiest weekends of March that they have these restrictions in place, among other things like garage closures, $100 flat rate parking, and we're just 2 blocks west of Ocean Drive, where we're going to go check out, and then we're going to go check out some license plate readers, DUI checkpoints, and everything. See how things have changed with spring break here in Miami Beach. All right, we're approaching Ocean Drive, and as you can see, we have City of Miami Police Department here, among many other agencies that are assisting in Miami Beach, Florida Highway Patrol, to name a few. We're at one of the beach entrances off of Ocean Drive, where there's a Google ambassador there. There's a checkpoint, technically. Its entrance, according to the press release, is supposed to close at 6 p.m. We just walk around. You can see there's is a mobile first aid station exclusive for spring break month. This is not here year round. Back this year is the Miami Beach Police Mobile Command Center. It's a really big truck. They've got an office-like setting in there. You can monitor surveillance cameras as well across the city. It's situated just off of 10th and Ocean Drive, next to one of the beach entrances, which, as I mentioned, does close at 6. You can see 2 of them closed right now. You can see fencing all along Ocean Drive, which wasn't a thing years ago. It was for the last year or two, but back then when it was, at its craziest, that wasn't there, and the street was actually closed off, especially during the pandemic. So a lot of people were invited onto the streets, something the city is no longer doing, in an attempt to keep crowds away. So all of Ocean Drive on the west side is completely fenced off. I am standing at the intersection.
I want to see ya in a Kia.
Again, we see a lot of incoherence in policy. And again, if we go to Trump's statements from other officials in his administration, we can understand that they know what the issues are, that they know the right way to go about things, yet they're meandering sort of in the right direction, but losing path. I don't know how to explain these drones collecting intelligence on Crimea. We haven't seen recent attacks from Ukraine against targets in Crimea, but we've seen attacks against Russia mainland on their energy resources.
We are Anchor. Stay tuned for updated real news.
Hello, Anchor Daily News viewers. We continue to bring you the most striking developments from the battlefield. The events of the last few days have once again demonstrated the impact of the war inside Russia. Explosions are echoing far beyond the border, and panic reigns in different parts of Russia. We've witnessed many attacks since the beginning of the war, but the latest developments seem to have once again put Moscow in a difficult situation. The state of emergency declared inside Russia reveals the extent of the chaos. Attacks inside Russia's borders prove the war is no longer one-sided. Recent operations by the Ukrainian army continue to target Russian military installations, infrastructure, and logistics centers. These attacks are having an impact not only on the front line, but also deep inside Russia. And this is not limited to military casualties. Russian civilians are also facing the fear and uncertainty caused by the explosions. The latest wave of attacks wreaked havoc near an airbase, with striking images emerging showing how the blast waves devastated the surrounding settlements. With the war spreading further and further into Russia's interior, the Kremlin is increasingly caught in a quandary. Moscow is struggling to ensure the safety of its population while the Ukrainian army's offensive capacity is growing. So, what do these latest attacks mean? Are Russia's measures sufficient, or is a bigger crisis on the horizon? In the coming minutes, we'll take a closer look at the events and examine the possible consequences of these attacks. Before we get to our report, though, a quick reminder. The Anchor Daily News team.
Losing again. That's how Donald Trump spent the past day. Frankly, that's how he's spending every day. Also, he's spending his time crashing our economy and crashing our markets. Let me explain what went
down. Oh, and by the way, Donald, when are you going to release those Epstein files? Don't think that we forgot about. Trump previously issued an executive order against yet another law firm he doesn't like because he says they're mean to him. The law firm's name is Jenner and Block. Jenner and Block, unlike the law firm Paul Weiss and Skadden, Jenner and Block didn't back down. They sued Donald Trump right away, the same way the law firm Bergen Scooey did, the same way the law firm Wilbur Hale did. More on that in a moment. And Jenner and Block won. They got assigned in their federal lawsuit against Donald Trump a George W. Bush judge, a judge by the name of Judge Bates, who was absolutely disgusted by the behavior of the Trump regime and issued an injunction against Trump's executive order. La Hooser, number one, Donald Trump. Then Donald Trump loses again. The law firm Wilmer Hale, who Donald Trump targeted with a similar executive order, sues Donald Trump. A federal judge is assigned to that case. Also, a Republican federal judge, a George W. Bush appointee by the name of.
All right, y'all, I got some breaking news for you. Forgive me for whispering in this segment. Crystal's actually in the room right next door now interviewing Greg Palast. We were on vacation most of this week, but we were able to get an interview, and it's with Greg Palast, and they're going to be discussing the brazen, over-the-top executive order that Trump signed, which is just an outright attempt to steal the 2026 and 2028 elections. We talked about that a little bit on my show, but we wanted to bring in an expert on this issue. That's Greg Palast. So definitely sign up for Crystal Kyle and friends below and watch that full interview because I'm sure he's going to drop some bombs in there for you. But again, forgive me for whispering because I got to try to be quiet. I don't want to interrupt their interview. But breaking news. So first of all, the stock market is absolutely tanking right now. The line is going straight down. Now, we've seen a little bit of this recently, but it looks like it's continuing. I don't see signs of it stopping, and other economic news is really disastrous. So just to give you some of it here, consumer confidence is plunging, down over 30% since November. 2/3 of consumers expect unemployment to rise in the year ahead. That's the highest level since 2009, which of course is the subprime mortgage crisis and the Great Recession. Apparently, even the wealthy are worried. Just 26% expect to be better off next year. That's down from 42% in August. Fears of job loss and rising prices from Trump's tariffs are surging. Inflation is rising, and now Bank of America has come out and said, yeah, we may see some modest inflation. Or excuse me, not modest inflation, wrong. Modest stagflation, which is the worst of all worlds, because that means prices are going to rise at the same time that unemployment is going to rise. And this is all self-inflicted by Trump and his disastrous economic policies, the robber baron coup that's going on right in front of our eyes. So really, really bad update for you there. Now, I also got to talk about Elon, man. Jesus Christ. He did an interview on Fox News the other day, and it was a nightmare. Lie after lie. He's just a disgusting human being. Like, the way he casually says things that are the polar opposite of the truth is, I want to take a shower after I listen to that man talk. But let's start with this. Elon came out the other day and...
Guys, such is our political structure. Biden was a slime ball, you know? Carrot head, come on. He's doing exactly what he did his first 4 years out, chaos, you know? No one talks about the pandemic where, close to 1 million Americans died. And if we get, we're only, less than 60 days, not even 100 days into this. And I'm saying, keep an eye on April 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd. Adolf Hitler's birthday, right? Somewhere in there. And these clowns love their dates, right? So I would say we're not having another election. Things are so bad now. He's already basically, is one of his first, presidential mandates was that he was declaring martial law. And he couldn't do it right then that day, the first day. But he got the ball rolling. He wanted whoever was going to run the Justice Department and whatever else department would like the military defense department to take 90 days to make a not a report, but you know how are you going to do this? How are we going to have martial law and no more elections ever again? Right? Where we're going to have basically a king, right? So, or emperor, maybe that comes first. You know, so you know, good luck with that. And the people who this is going to hurt worse is white males, right? Not that it's going to hurt them worse to begin with, because basically once this goes in, anyone of color or any female will either be a serf or property, right? So that's like 80% of the population will be either a serf or property, which they already are. You know? And that's the whole thing about all this, gang, is that this is already a fait accompli. The United States has been this way since Christopher Columbus. You know, so this is good. This chaos is good. Downey taking a wrecking ball to everything is good, because you're not going to be able to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And then it's going to be up to the American public to step forth, work together as community, and basically move in a positive direction. If not, we're looking at 900 years of the Dark Ages, because it already happened back there when Christianity, when the Roman Empire became a Holy Roman Empire, and then it started to break apart into different sects of Christianity. Right? So we kind of slid, and everything was done on purpose. It was all scripted to push the human race into 900. You know, when they didn't know how to read, barely couldn't count further than their fingers, and good luck with that. Right? It wasn't so bad. People had a lot of sex and drank a lot, and survived kind of. Kind of 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. So anyway, I don't know what you guys expect of my shows anymore. I mean, pretty much, I just watch the grass grow. I've pretty much done what I came to do here. I got everyone aware of what's going on. No one doesn't know that they're, unless they come together. And then the hurricane came, and we had an amazing 6 to 8 months of the community being a community. Then they went back to being the stupid puddinheads they are. So, and nothing got fixed. All the roads. Like I said, it used to take me 15 minutes. Now it takes me an hour to get out. I don't do the show anymore. Right? My place that was just down the road got washed away. Right. So anyway, good luck. Anyway, so I'm looking at a whole bunch of operations. I have no money. I tell all that. Like, guys, I have about $4 in my pocket. That's it. If you expect me to pay anything, not gonna happen. If you're gonna do this on a free nickel, maybe I'll think about it. And a lot of them said, you better do it now, because we don't know what the medical institution is going to look like. Oh, good luck. Especially all you youngsters out there. Anybody younger than 50 years old, you got another 60 years to go for the Dark Ages. Good luck, or you can step up. And I've helped many communities step up before, and it was fun. And we did great things, and we stopped the nasties. Again, I've got over 2,000 shows on this channel that tell all the stories. Go watch them. I'm not going to say them again. I'm going to just kind of talk like this, like a good grandpa would. Guys, wake up. Better start having. And I don't see anyone living a life that's really. So they got a couple of cars, they got a house, they got a vacation place. Well, it's about to burn up. The sky around me is full of horse smoke. I don't know where it is. No one seems. But do you know where the fire is at? Oh, fire? What fire? The sky is like full of. You can smell it, you can taste it, you can see it, and they go, what fire? Until the fire's like burning at their shoes, so you don't know. So good luck with that. And that's kind of where California was, and what happened in Hawaii. That 6 square last of the great Hawaiian Empire was burnt to a crisp. It was a hurricane that went, so it was terrible. But why didn't the rest of Hawaii, on from the center of that fire, 3 miles to the north and 3 miles to the south, there was people on the beach in bikinis drinking cocktails and glasses with little umbrellas. No wind, no smoke, no nothing. Lahaina just burnt to a crisp. I mean, to dust, right? And they wouldn't let people in because it was so toxic. So they didn't want people to take samples of the earth and then take it to a good lab to say what the heck was that, and they would have scientific evidence that was space-based energy weapon used against them. So it molecular changed everything, right? Just like around here, a space-based weapon was used. And how does water go uphill 4,000 feet, right? And I'm in the Sawtooth Mountain range. It had to do it many, many, many times. How did that wipe out whole sides of mountains? Why? Because space energy weapon hit the ground, and as a Charles just told me that everything is made out of water. It's just how it's held together, right? So think about that one. Go look at quantum physics, and how things are held together. The strong force, the weak force, the electromagnetic force, gravity. How's it all put together? I mean, just look at the picture. You can't even find them anymore, but they played it over and over and over and over and over and over days after 9/11. Of the two towers coming down like a waterfall of dust. That was basically all asbestos. That kind of went all over Manhattan, and the cancer rate went through the roof. Anyway, and wait till you thought COVID was bad. Ooh, baby. And now that we're unplugged from World Health Organization, now that we got rid of AID, which basically fed half the world. But the thing it really did was it was an intelligence arm, and it was a COVID entity that was a cousin of the CIA. But it did feed half the world, and now that it's not feeding half the world, that half the world will probably starve to death in the next 9 months. Be nasty, a lot of disease. Whenever so what's going on in basically the Gaza Strip is the laboratory, right? How to kill everyone. It's like I'd be back. It's the Terminator, right? And that's what Israel is turning into, the Terminator. So it's not a happy thing to be the Terminator. It's probably worse to be the Terminator than the people being killed because they're going to die pretty quick. And now that they're truly being starved to death after they experienced 18 months of hell, and they're going back to it, and 50,000 of the IDF are going in and staying there, killing everybody. And I'm sure they're going to use nuclear weapons or chemical weapons or something to, it's gonna, to shoot 2-point-something million people. It's going to take a long time. Even to drop bombs, it'll take a long time. I don't think we have enough money in America to pay for that. So it'll be fun, right? And it'll force fascism more. I mean, look what it's doing to college campuses. And I think this is great. Go for it, because the faster they do all of that, and all you got to do is read your Bible. I mean, Israel, every time it did something like what it's doing now, God came back and punished them like, ooh, baby, right? To the point that they left the Mideast, for a good 2,000 years. And then coming back, hey, that's our land. We only left 2,000 years. I still got the keys to my house. So it's all fun and games until someone loses an eye or an arm or a leg or a head or you know what I'm saying. So it's all good. It's all good because God basically has a plan, right? And we have no idea who God is, what God is, anything that anyone tells you, no. You do not have that personal relationship. If you are not in agape love, God's unconditional love, in a compact, right? He talks about it in the Old, and the Old Testament in King James, it's like 1/5 of what the Hebrews have in their text that run we only get to look at the Torah, not the Talmud or the Kabbalah. In the Torah, we only get a tenth of the Torah, and it was rewritten by crack head baby monkeys on typewriters for 1,200 years. It's like the worst game of telephone ever played. So it's all good, kids. Let's see what you do with it, right? So if anybody wants to have a conversation with me, get a hold of me at dudeawake42 at gmail. Come, make comments on these shows. There's a ton of shows you can make comments on. I would say start taking down some of these shows and take a look at them. See what you get out. Let's see. Let's see what happened to Cliff High. It's this one here.
So much woo, folks. This is a tough way to end the week if you're long the market.
All right, let me preface this for you. What you're about to see is a man who once claimed with a straight face that the economy was only good under Biden because of the anticipation of Trump's return.
Real quick, final question on the Dow, S&P 500, U.S. stock marketing all-time highs today. Second record so far in 2024. If we can pop up the Dow.
Donald Trump has said several times the last few days the stock market's rallying because it's anticipating that he will return to the presidency.
Being forced to admit that the economy under Trump is an absolute train wreck.
So much woo, folks. This is a tough way to end the week if you're long the market. If you're long gold, you're happy, but Dow is losing 724, the S&P down 113, the NASDAQ down 484. That will do it for us.
Hello, folks. Welcome to Kudlow. I'm Larry Kudlow. So markets crash over 700 points today after a bad inflation report, more tariff confusion. Oh, and by the way, Republicans really going to raise taxes? That could have done it. If this is true, this would be among the top 3 dumbest things I've ever heard.
Oh, that's gotta hurt. It's been quite a week at Fox HQ. Creative ways to spin the signal disaster. A scandal to have happened under Biden, well, we'd still be inundated with segments on how exactly this is tied to Hunter's laptop.
Well, this is like Trump throws 20 touchdowns in a row and he finally throws a pick 6. And that's what everybody wants to talk about. And the only way you get people to stop talking about it is you throw another touchdown. Now, I don't know what that's going to look like, but he's got to throw another touchdown, and he's got to throw it fast. No one outside of D.C. and in the news business really cares about this story. There's no video. There's no sex. There's no fraud. No one even knows what a Houthi is. Is, people know what ISIS is. No one knows what a Houthi is.
The latest uphill battle being forced to report on the repercussions of Trump's tariff war.
The stock market, to Steve's point, since Election Day, is flat. It's only down 2% since he was elected president again. And since Inauguration Day, it's down 5.5%. I mean, we're not talking about... That's a lot.
5.5% is a lot.
Okay. All right. Well, when we're talking about the market meltdown, I see these headlines out there, and I think
it's the last thing I want to market meltdown. I'm not the one who challenged all of Trump's tariffs. I was equal with Steve. We both didn't like them. Okay.
And that's still where you are.
I think tariffs should be a blunt instrument that hits something like steel, something like tires, not across the board.
Targeted.
And very targeted.
After Trump announced 25% tariffs set to take effect April 2nd, the response from the market was immediate. And by response, I mean it went off a cliff. None more so than the auto industry that even CNBC couldn't help but report on.
And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the States, there's absolutely no tariff. We start.
Driving the auto industry into a recession. GM shares are down 5%. We were sitting around the desk looking at the declines in the automakers as President Trump is speaking.
Well, it's been a difficult run already for the automakers, and we have heard about sensitivity on higher prices. And again, if you're talking about $4,000 on a crossover, and they're saying three times that in terms of EVs,
$65 billion of tariffs that we have on the table that we can launch towards the U.S. We have to run through every tariff and minimize the pain for Canadians, maximize the pain for Americans. And I feel terrible for the Americans, but it's one person, it's President Trump, that's creating this chaos.
Then it was over to Fox as Larry Kudlow, looking slightly more glum than usual, was forced to forfeit an invite to Mar-a-Lago by, dare I say, reporting the news. The market is in disarray, and blame falls only in one place.
Hello, folks. Welcome to Kudlow. I'm Larry Kudlow. So markets crashed over 700 points today after a bad inflation report, more tariff confusion. Oh, and by the way, Republicans really going to raise taxes? That could have done it. Our own Sandra Smith, Taylor Riggs, and Jerry Wills be right here on set to break it all. If this is three dumbest things I've ever heard.
Now keep in mind, this is a man who has twisted himself into a Wetzel pretzel on numerous occasions.
Trump thought he had it locked down. A ceasefire in Ukraine, both sides nodding yes. No more missiles, no more bloodshed, just a deal that could have changed everything. But then Putin pulled the rug. Not only did Russia ignore the ceasefire, it ramped up attacks. Now Trump's cabinet is in full-blown panic mode. The plans unraveling, the pressures mounting, and no one saw this betrayal coming this fast. So what went wrong? Did Putin play Trump from the start? Is there still a way to salvage the deal, or is the war about to explode again? This episode breaks down the backstabbing, the fallout, and what Trump and NATO can actually do now. Buckle up, this one is wild. First, let's review the actual timeline of Trump's negotiations with Ukraine and Russia, focusing on the potential ceasefire agreements that he tried to broker between the two countries. Until Trump's inauguration on January 20th, there had been virtually no progress on even attempting peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. Various countries made proposals for possible ceasefire agreements, but they were rejected by one or the other side. The representatives from Ukraine and Russia met 3 times between 2022 and 24, but reached no agreement due to the vastly different specifically how unlikely either side. This was further complicated by Ukraine managing to invade Kursk in 2024, gaining a large foothold in Russia's own territory and cementing its intent to keep fighting until a beneficial agreement for Ukraine was reached. Even before Trump's inauguration, he made several bold claims about his ability to solve the war diplomatically. Specifically, he pointed to his amenable relationship with Putin over the previous decades as a way to reach diplomacy with Russia. In fact, one of his most famous pronouncements was that he could end the war in Ukraine in a day, if only he were given the chance to do so. When Trump assumed office, he tried to do just that, either directly or through his administration, and the US took a far more aggressive and active stance in Ukraine-Russia relations. This led to a significant increase in meetings and peace proposals. However, there was a marked shift in how the US approached the peace agreements. The administration of former President Joe Biden had previously wholly supported the Ukrainian effort, specifically its intent to join NATO and keep its pre-war territory and possibly even gain Crimea back. The Trump administration took a different route, trying to end the war as soon as possible, even if that would give significant concessions to Russia, considering that it had occupied roughly 20% of Ukraine's territory. This was further complicated by Ukraine's possible admission into NATO, which contrasted Russia's supposed national security and integrity concerns. Simply put, the two sides couldn't agree on any kind of middle ground, so the US decided to appeal to the aggressor in an attempt to pacify them. which resulted in the following agreements and announcements, many of which go against what NATO attempted to do for 3 years. On February 12th, US Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth publicly stated that returning Ukraine to its pre-2014 borders was unrealistic, emphasizing the necessity of robust security guarantees for Ukraine while expressing skepticism about Ukraine's NATO membership prospects. Shortly thereafter, on February 18th, high-level US and Russian delegations convened in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, led by US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who will be discussed further in a bit, and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, respectively. The negotiations focused on frameworks for ending the Ukraine conflict, as well as contingent economic and investment opportunities tied to achieving peace. Ukraine was excluded from these discussions, leading Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to express deep concern about being left out of talks that directly impacted Ukraine's future. This would set a precedent for the US trying to achieve peace solely through discussions and diplomacy with Russia, China, and even NATO, while trying to impose demands on Ukraine. On February 25th, the US and Ukraine reached a preliminary agreement outlining the joint development of Ukraine's mineral resources, including rare earth elements, oil, and gas, as part of reconstruction efforts, and repayment for substantial US aid during the conflict. However, a key meeting on February 28th in Washington, D.C., between President Trump and President Zelensky, intended to finalize the mineral resources agreement, ended abruptly without resolution. The meeting became notably contentious, with Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance publicly criticizing Zelensky, marking a rare diplomatic confrontation between the two countries. Subsequently, the U.S. temporarily suspended military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine, significantly increasing tensions. In actuality, the agreement in question heavily favored the U.S. Trump believed that Ukraine needed to repay its supposed debt to the U.S., and the only way for the country to do so without going deeper into an economic crisis was to cede its natural resources. As such, the agreement estimated the value of these resources at roughly half their actual rate. However, the U.S. refused to give Ukraine any security assurances in the form of sending its own peacekeeping forces alongside industrial equipment and crew to extract these resources. Additionally, the ceasefire agreement never actually stated its end goal. It was ambiguous enough to allow Russia to resume its attacks with impunity, while Ukraine was forbidden from receiving vital aid. Despite all that, Zelensky preliminarily agreed to the terms of the mineral deal, as it would give Ukraine a much-needed reprieve from non-stop fighting and allow it to recuperate and regroup its forces for when the fighting inevitably continues. And yet the agreement was never ratified, as Trump believed that Zelensky wasn't willing to end the war. Efforts to mend these diplomatic strains continued. On March 11th, after further discussions in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, Ukraine agreed to support a U.S. proposed 30-day ceasefire with Russia. In return, the U.S. resumed military aid and intelligence cooperation, signaling a potential de-escalation of hostilities. Then on March 18th, a phone call between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin resulted in Putin agreeing to a partial ceasefire, a 30-day halt in attacks specifically targeting Ukraine's energy infrastructure, though Russia refrained from committing to a comprehensive ceasefire. The move was intended to create a more favorable environment for further diplomatic negotiations. However, mere hours after the ceasefire was supposed to take effect, both Russia and Ukraine restarted hostilities, with a series of attacks on vital military and industrial compounds. A day later, Russian soldiers bombed Russia's own gas pipelines, at least according to reports from Ukrainian intelligence services. Kyiv accused Russia of sabotaging the Sudza pipeline, which had been vital in supplying Europe with Russian gas through Ukraine. According to Ukraine, Russia is now trying to negate the ceasefire deal that it had signed, or at least partially agreed to, with Ukraine through US diplomacy. This move undermines Trump's authority and attempts to end the war, contrary to his previous statements about a long-standing friendship and understanding with Putin. On Russia's side, this could be explained by the relative lack of effect that the ceasefire would have on the state of the war. According to the Kremlin, a 30-day ceasefire, to which both sides agreed recently, would technically give nothing to Russia, while allowing...
So, as I said 3 years ago, when it started, that this war would last probably 5 years and 1 million people would die. And most of the body bags would go back to Russia. But it would also be a catastrophic loss of life and property and wealth in Ukraine. But of all the people I have ever known, Ukrainians are the toughest. And compared to Russians are just forget about it. So they just know how to die. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. At what level that people be ready to stop killing each other. My sense is that Russia is going to use nuclear weapons. It's going to drop one on Kiev and Odessa, the two major cultural and economic centers of Ukraine. If they do that, Russia, it's all over. Those people are just going to go over and just kill as many of you Russians as they can. And then the Europeans will come in on their side big time, and then Russia will have to drop a few nukes into Europe, right? America is still part of NATO, still part of Section 5 there, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens. And that's all going to happen before April 20, 21, 22, 23, right in there, right around Adolf's birthday. And it'll be interesting, here the first of the month is coming up relatively soon. I think it's Tuesday. Let's see. Oh, today's the 31st. So tomorrow is the first, second is so Tuesday is the third. Okay. Yeah, Tuesday is the first. Thursday is the third. Okay. Anyway, so that's interesting. See what happens. What was the question I wanted to ask? Who was the first female Italian saint in America? Who was the first American Catholic saint? Hey, Bree, can I have a little more water? Oh, yes, we're fine. Latest UFI.
most American Catholics, if you say, well, who's the first American saint? They would say like Saint Seton maybe, or they may say Saint Kateri. Almost nobody would say Mother Cabrini. And it's a technicality, of course, because the United States has an immigration policy where you become a citizen when you come here legally and you become a citizen. Mother Cabrini became a citizen of the United States. She was canonized. So she's the first American saint, even though she was Italian. And she was born in Italy, and she bore.
Latest video by Cliff High.
I'm Janice Torres.
And I'm Austin Hankwitz.
We're the hosts of Mind the Business, Small Business Success Stories, a podcast brought to you by Intuit QuickBooks.
I ain't trying to be donkey today no more. They get mad about what they already did. I'm not making these people lose their cards out the other day, and it really caught me off guard. Damn, Solomon, got the donkey of the day today. Well, just Larry, it's donkey of the day for Friday, December 13th.
Oh, thank you, dear.
White House National Security Communications. John Kirby. Listen, man, if I had a tinfoil Pooh Shiesty mask on, I'd put it on right now. Do we have the X-Files music? Put my X-Files music on. There is something happening in our country right now that nobody seems to be properly paying attention to. The Black Mothership, which we call the Breakfast Club Studio. We're in New York, but we live in New Jersey. I live in New Jersey, and right now everybody is seeing these drones. And I'm putting drones in parentheses. I'm doing my air quotes right now. These drones, okay? Not just the little small drones that drop off packages. These drones that are SUV sized are just flying all over New Jersey. Okay, I saw one myself. I was laying in bed about a week ago, and my wife said, "What is that?" And I said, "It's a plane." She said, "That don't look like no plane." And I said, "It's too big to be a drone." It had lights on it, and it just flew by. This was on or around December 3rd. And since then, these SUV-sized drones have been seen all over New Jersey. It was on the front page of the New York Post yesterday. People are online showing videos of them. You can see them clear as day. Yesterday, the New Jersey Division of Fire Safety sent out an intelligence bulletin.
Breaking news. Those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. That's a little lesson in this breaking story for Donald Trump and today, J.D. Vance. Oh my goodness, you got to understand, in my entire lifetime, I have never actually seen the level of retribution to this administration as we are seeing in less than 90 days. I've even seen world leaders welcome leaders from the U.S. in times of the Cold War and strained relationships, much less a country from NATO. And in this breaking story, you will not believe what great is, how it seemed just a couple of days ago for Usha and J.D. Vance. Take a look at this.
Vice President J.D. Vance joining a ever more high-profile trip to Greenland as President Trump says the U.S. should take that territory away from Denmark, who happens to be a NATO ally of ours. Vance says he wants to go on what was meant to be initially a trip for his wife Usha, one of their children, and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. Ed O'Keefe joins us again from the White House. Ed, this is really a talker. Why the change of plans?
Well, Tony, the vice president says it's all about global security. He made the announcement in an online video saying he would travel to the U.S. military base on Greenland's northwest coast. Earlier this week, it was announced that his wife, the Second Lady, Usha Vance, and one of their 3 children plan to visit historic sites and attend a dog sled race. Greenland's outgoing prime minister called those plans and a potential visit by other U.S. officials, quote, highly aggressive. Now, the vice president says there was so much excitement surrounding his wife's trip, he didn't want her to have all that fun by herself. The trip makes him the highest-ranking American official to visit since President Trump suggested he wants to bring Greenland, a self-governing territory of Denmark, under control. In his video message, Vance said leaders in the U.S. and Denmark have, quote, ignored for far too long and said it's bad for the security of the world. The vice president for Friday, and by refocusing the trip, we'll see if it does anything to tamp down the controversy.
Oh, yes, my goodness. Just like going to Hawaii. The entire country had all the lays out and the fire torches, and they were ready to throw a big old tiki Greenland. Never mind. We We changed our mind. And in this breaking story, look at what the Tourism Department of Greenland just told J.D. Vance.
A Greenlandic tourism business has said it changed its mind about welcoming the vice president's wife, Usha Vance, to their store. Tupelak Travel wrote on Facebook that it had informed the U.S. consulate that it did not want Vance to visit because of the underlying agenda. The post ended with a phrase meaning Greenland belongs to the Greenlanders. Manager Henrik Skitzbjerg told Newsweek the decision was made because we were afraid that it would turn out to be a MAGA event, which we did not want to be part of. Newsweek has contacted the U.S. consulate in England and the Vice President's office for comment via email. Why it matters. President Donald Trump has repeatedly suggested that the U.S. should control Greenland, a self-governing territory of Denmark. He told Congress earlier this month that it would happen one way or another because it would be good for national security. However, polls conducted this year have shown that an overwhelming majority of Greenlanders do not support Trump's plan.
Tighten trade policies with major partners, aiming to protect domestic manufacturing and increase border control. But Mexico is not a minor player. The country is the top supplier of goods to the U.S., and its production network is deeply intertwined with the North American economy. As soon as the tariffs were announced, Mexico's markets went into shock. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum didn't hold back, declaring, "We will not accept this imposition." To reinforce her stance, Sheinbaum led a massive protest at Zocalo Square in Mexico City. Tens of thousands of people waved Mexican flags and chanted, "Mexico deserves respect." But Mexico's response wasn't just emotional, it was calculated. The Mexican government quickly engaged in diplomatic efforts to limit the fallout from the new tariffs. What followed was a high-stakes game of political and economic maneuvering that's still unfolding. Under intense pressure from businesses and the public, Mexico avoided an immediate escalation by turning to negotiation. Within weeks, President Sheinbaum met directly. The result? A temporary reprieve. The U.S. agreed to delay tariffs on goods covered under the USMCA, United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, until April 2nd. Mexico celebrated this as a win, but not a complete one. The U.S. government refused to lift tariffs on steel and aluminum, two critical materials for the auto industry. That decision has left North American automakers scrambling to adjust. Ford, GM, and Stellantis quickly raised alarms that rising production costs could lead to higher car prices and potential factory closures. The question now, how much damage can the industry absorb before it breaks? If you're planning to buy a new car soon, you might want to think twice. Ford has warned that tariffs could push the price of an F-150 truck up by as much as $12,000. GM and Stellantis have suggested they may need to reduce production or even just some plans to manage rising costs. Why the chaos? It comes down to the supply chain. The North American auto industry relies on an incredibly complex production network. Some auto parts cross the U.S.-Mexico border up to 8 times before a car is completed. Every crossing under the new tariff means an extra cost, and that cost will be passed on to consumers. Electric vehicles, EVs, aren't immune either. Batteries, sensors, and electric motors, many sourced from Mexico, are about to get a lot more expensive. That's bad news for an industry that's already struggling to meet demand for affordable EVs. And it doesn't stop there.
Elon Musk and his micro-penis parade on Fox last night, and it's every bit as pathetic as you would think. But before we do that, Musk just tweeted this morning, he's a big cheater. He can't win anything on his own right. On Sunday night, I will give a talk in Wisconsin. Entrance those who have voted in the Supreme Court election. I will also personally hand over 2 checks for $1 million each in appreciation for you taking the time to vote. This is super important. And I want to say to our viewers, this is super important. This is blatant fraud. Could you imagine if any left-wing billionaire were doing such a thing, the meltdown that would occur on Fox News? Elon Musk and Donald Trump can't play fair because facts are against them. These are guys that are trying to concentrate power in the executive branch. They want to dismantle democracy. And I want to remind everybody that Elon Musk is a Nazi. Objectively, he is a Nazi. He's an untreated drug addict, and he's always going after trans people. And I think it's important to point out that he himself does gender affirming care. Look no further than his hair plugs. Next up, Elon Musk. Here he is with the micro penis parade, being the biggest titty baby on the planet on Fox News with the Doge micro penis gang.
The people pushing the propaganda that caused that guy to do it. Those are the real villains here. And we're going to go after them. And the president's made it clear we're going to go after them. The ones providing the money, the ones pushing the lies and propaganda, we're going after them.
The real villains in this country right now are the billionaires that are complete liars, that are lying to working class Americans and taking taxpayer funded money, which is the only reason that Elon Musk is a billionaire. This guy has had help every step of the way, and he wants to go and take more money from the very place that has helped him. The true villain in this is the man that did back-to-back Hail Hitlers. He is a total Nazi. His cars suck. They're recalled. Nobody wants them anymore, except for maybe a few right-wing bros. But his main base now, which is the working class base, they don't want to put something in. Mind you, all of the Tesla trucks have been recalled completely, and insurance companies are refusing to insure them. But this is a guy who can't take personal accountability for anything. He can't sit down in front of a camera with an objective news source. He has to go to a safe space, which is Fox News. He can't sit down and say, listen,
Hey everybody, it's Will Salatan from The Bulwark. Did you know that Donald Trump is one of the smartest people in the world? Trust me, I'm like a smart person. That's what he says. And today, we're going to test that theory. We're going to watch Trump as several Fox News anchors try to coach him to stop saying stupid things and start saying smart things. Let's see how well he does. We'll start with Trump's opinion of his own intellect. Here he is earlier this year, explaining just how brilliant his family is.
You know, I had an uncle. He's the longest serving professor, Dr. John Trump, in the history of MIT. Same genes. We have genes. We're smart people. We're smart people.
And here's Trump at a rally in Atlanta on Saturday, ridiculing his opponent, Kamala Harris.
She happens to be really a low IQ individual. She really does. She has a very low IQ. She's.
Donald Trump has once again gone to Florida, to Mar-a-Lago for another vacation, and he has gone mute. Yes, the blowhard himself, not making really any posts this morning. He made one post saying something about TikTok being very Trumpy, but other than this one post, usually on Saturday, it's post, and then, maybe he'll do a podcast interview in the morning, and there's a lot to discuss. But this says his approval is plummeting, and he is crashing the economy. He did send this following email out last night. Win a free round of golf at Trump International. Ben, free round of golf at my home course. Ben, there is a first time for everything, and today is your lucky day. I just launched a top secret opportunity for Trump Patriots to win a round of golf at Trump International Mar-a-Lago. Free round of golf, free hotel stay, free flight. All you got to do is give Donald Trump some more money. Also, before Donald Trump left to Mar-a-Lago, he gave this slurry, strange interview with this MAGA podcaster where clearly he seemed confused and deteriorating. And I think he thought signal meant cell phone reception when he was asked about Signal Gate. Watch this. He's unwell. Play this clip.
Well, let me just start with that piece of it. Out of a country of over 300 million people, how is it that Jeffrey Goldberg, who hates you, ends up on this Signal chat? Isn't that bizarre?
It is bizarre that he's a sleazebag, but at the highest level. Yeah. His magazine is failing. It's going to be out of business soon, in my opinion. It's bad. It's too bad we give it a little boost like this. But somebody in my group either screwed up or it's a bad signal. It's a bad signal, happens to. But
so as I mentioned at the outset of the video, Trump's approval is plummeting. Right now it's at 43%. Over 53% of Americans disapprove, according to Gallup. This is like pretty much the lowest ever, other than Trump in his first term, for any president. And of course, we know the reasons why. He lied about everything, and he's failing miserably. And he and Elon Musk and Doge have engaged in a hostile takeover of the government, where they've wrecked essential services and they've wrecked the economy. They've fired veterans and other federal workers, and they've done it while mocking and laughing at we the people. Take a look right here. Prices are rising faster than expected. Trump's tariffs are making it worse. Core PCE jumped 0.4% in February. We learned that on Friday, hitting 2.8% year over year. This is now the highest in over a year. In other words, inflation is going up, prices are going up, and we're heading towards something called stagflation, which hadn't happened in like 50 years. This is a crashing GDP, rising inflation. It basically freezes the Federal Reserve. They're not sure what they do. They can't really lower interest rates, can't really raise interest rates, and you're kind of stuck in this horrible economic crisis. And with Donald Trump, things are going to get worse. As this post from Chris Jackson says, his 25% tariffs on imported cars and parts are driving up costs for American families and just going to make things worse. You saw my other reports today and this past week how the international community is reacting. Of course, Prime Minister Carney of Canada has said, "See you later, United States. Our special relationship is over." Europe has formed its own unique alliances outside of the United States, and they invited Zelensky to their meetings this past week. America is isolated all alone. You're seeing polls like this as well. This is from the CBS YouGov poll. Is your income keeping up with inflation? 76% of Americans say it is not. New breaking news on Hegseth as well. Pete Hegseth's younger brother now serving in key positions inside the Pentagon as a Homeland Security liaison and senior advisor. Phil Hegseth's past experience includes founding his own podcast production company called Embassy and Third and working on social media and podcasts. So again, as it was with Hegseth, now with his brother Pete, they are the real DEI hires. Didn't earn it. Also, we learned yesterday, and we're getting more details this morning, as Trump is vacationing in Mar-a-Lago, Trump's defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, brought his wife, who's also a former Fox News producer, to NATO meetings on Ukraine and a classified Pentagon briefing with the UK defense secretary. So just sharing with his wife and others additional classified information. Take a look at this headline right here. Trump suffers day of losses in his retribution campaign against law firm. So as Donald Trump is now vacationing at Mar-a-Lago, once again, as a loser, the firm Jenner and Block won an injunction against Donald Trump from a Republican George W. Bush appointed judge in Washington, D.C. Then you had Wilmer Hale, another law firm. There was a Republican appointed judge as well in D.C. They won against Donald Trump, blocking his executive order. And then previously, we reported how the law firm Perkins Coie, who Donald Trump targeted with an executive order, they beat Donald Trump and got an injunction against his executive order there as well. And I also talked about in other hot takes how Judge Boasberg issued an injunction against.
Okay, let's see.
necessary little bits of fiddle work here. Put stuff into the house, and it's been something of a chore to get everything re-put together. Anyway, today is Sunday morning. Sunday morning, 9:11 a.m. How fortuitous, September 15. Wanted to talk for a few minutes about some of the stuff out of the data. I have been, circumstances have forced me to work very diligently to get a bunch of this stuff processed so I can get the servers moved, because we've got another area that the floor is running out in my building. The whole thing has to be collapsed, basically, get down to the cement underlayment, and then I'll decide what to do. Circumstances have changed, so the cement floor is not necessarily a real problem anymore. It had been, because I'd intended to use that building for exercise equipment and martial arts kind of function, and you don't really want to do those kind of things on a cement floor. Even a mat on a cement floor is not good to roll against repeatedly, especially at my age. Anyway, though, so
for decades, Voyager 1 has traveled through the unknown, sending back data that has reshaped our understanding of the universe. But recently, something happened that no one expected. On November 14th, 2023, Voyager 1 went silent. The spacecraft, which had been operational for over 46 years, suddenly stopped communicating, transmitting only meaningless binary data. Was this a technical failure? Or did Voyager 1 encounter something out there? Something it was never meant to find? For 5 long months, NASA struggled to re-establish contact. Then, in April 2024, Voyager 1 came back online. But what it transmitted next left scientists in shock. A mysterious signal, a strange anomaly at the boundary of the solar system, and data that completely defied everything we thought we knew about the universe. What did Voyager 1 discover beyond the heliopause? Why is NASA keeping details hidden? And most importantly, what does this mean for the future of space exploration? Stay with us, because what you're about to hear may change the way you see the universe forever. On November 14th, 2023, Voyager 1 stopped responding. Scientists at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory expected routine data transmissions, but instead, they received only a chaotic stream of binary code. It was as if the spacecraft had lost all sense of direction. The team quickly realized that something had gone terribly wrong with Voyager's onboard flight data system, FDS. The problem? A memory failure. Without functioning memory, Voyager 1 couldn't process its surroundings or send back any meaningful data. For the first time in decades, it seemed like the mission was over. But NASA wasn't ready to give up. The engineers devised a daring plan. They would reallocate the FDS code to another section of the probe's memory, something never attempted before. The risk? If the new code failed, Voyager 1 could be lost forever. With signals taking 22.5 hours to travel one way, every command sent to the spacecraft was a gamble. Then, on April 18th, 2024, the team sent the final reprogramming command. For 2 long days, they waited in silence. Then, on April 20th, the impossible happened. Voyager 1 responded. It was alive, but what it sent back was not what NASA expected. When Voyager 1 re-established contact, its first transmissions were normal. Telemetry data confirmed that the spacecraft was functional. But then, something strange emerged. Voyager 1 detected an anomaly beyond the heliopause, the boundary where the sun's influence ends and interstellar space begins. This region had always been thought of as a smooth transition, where the solar wind gradually fades into the interstellar medium. But Voyager 1's new data suggested otherwise. Instead of a simple boundary, the heliopause appeared to be fluctuating violently, expanding and contracting in ways that scientists could not explain. Massive shock waves, larger than ever predicted, were passing through the area. Even more unsettling, Voyager 1 detected an unusual increase in particle density, 10 times higher than theoretical models suggested. Where was this extra energy coming from? Why was interstellar space behaving so unpredictably? And then, buried within the data, was something even more disturbing. Among the information sent back from Voyager 1 was a repeating signal, a low-frequency hum, detected at a steady 3 kilohertz for nearly 3 years. At first, NASA thought it was just interstellar plasma waves, something Voyager had detected before. But this was different. Unlike previous plasma wave data, this signal remained constant. It didn't vary with solar activity. It didn't fade. It was as if it was deliberate. Scientists were baffled. Was this just a new kind of cosmic phenomenon? Or was it something else? A communication, a beacon, or a warning? What made this unsettling was that the signal's intensity increased as Voyager 1 moved further into deep space. It was as if something, or someone, was responding. NASA has always been cautious about discussing extraterrestrial possibilities. But behind closed doors, some scientists were beginning to ask the inevitable question. What if Voyager 1 had encountered something artificial? The strange, structured signal, the unexpected fluctuations at the heliopause, the increase in particle density. None of it matched existing models.
Thank you, my friend.
Some experts speculated that Voyager 1 might have passed through an unseen force field, an energy barrier designed to protect something beyond the solar system. Others wondered if the signal could be coming from an unknown celestial body, or even an object actively observing Voyager 1's journey. NASA, for its part, has remained silent. The agency officially attributes the anomalies to natural cosmic activity.
Kind of done with early the morning after Jeffrey Goldberg came on our show and talked about it, but it just keeps festering. And then on top of that, the Pennsylvania Senate race, big question, is that a sign of things to come? And there's no doubt that the political team inside the White House, when they decided to withdraw their United Nations selection, the Congresswoman, there's no doubt they were looking at those results. And by the way, it would be political negligence if they didn't look at what happened in Lancaster County, which is just dead center of MAGA country in Pennsylvania, that elected their first state senator in 100 years.
Yeah, and there are even concerns about a congressional district in Florida. That there are Republicans suddenly see these polls. Though Trump himself, for him, is putting up decent numbers, there's others that are real signs of concern about Elon Musk, and as you just mentioned, the polls about this signal snafu as well, which we'll get to in just a moment. But let's start with Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. As you just mentioned, she had been nominated to be President Trump's next ambassador to the United Nations. No more. The president announced the move on Truth Social yesterday, writing in part this: with a very tight majority, I don't want to take a chance on anyone else running for Elise's seat. There are others that can do a good job at the United Nations. Stefanik's house district President Trump by more than 20 points in November and was thought to have been a safe GOP seat. But a recent Democratic election win in a Pennsylvania Republican stronghold, along with, as mentioned, some real competitive races, surprisingly so in Florida, Republicans are now worried for their slim majority. As it stands, the GOP can only afford to lose 2 votes in the House and still pass its agenda items. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries weighed in on the Stefanik move in a statement, writing in part, the Republican agenda is extremely unpopular. They are crashing the economy in real time, and House Republicans are running scared. What happened to their so-called mandate? And Joe, of course, we know that President Trump took office declaring he had one of the biggest mandates in history. That obviously not true, but right. Republicans did control White House, both houses of Congress, narrowly, but they got it. But already, real concerns that could evaporate.
Well, I'll tell you, after 30 years of following this stuff closely, first of all, Republicans did not have a mandate this year. But what I have found is even mandates aren't mandates. I mean, and you can even go back in history. Again, one of my favorite examples, Rick Perlstein wrote a book about the rise of the new Republican Party. And the first page is a declaration after LBJ's 1964 landslide that the Republican Party, the conservative movement, dead in the water, finished, would not be resurrected in our lifetime. And it was like the smartest minds in media. Of course, 2 years later, Republicans did very well in the off-year elections in 60.
In for Lawrence tonight on The Last Word. Good evening, Jason.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for starting us off. It's been an interesting news day. Thank you.
Indeed. Good luck.
Today, the Trump administration sent a very online guy, otherwise known as J.D. Vance, to Greenland in the hopes that we would be able to talk about that tonight instead of maybe this. Ouch. Couldn't find anyone to do a photo op with Usha Vance. Maybe they're just not that into you. But yeah, Trump might prefer that you read instead of, say, checking your bank account or your 401k or your grocery receipts. Because Donald Trump didn't want to do anything that was going to get you to pay attention to prices today. Today, U.S. stocks plummeted after the news that inflation has gone up at 2.8% and consumer sentiment has dropped at a 2-year low. As one Fox Business anchor put it, this is a tough way to end the week.
Woo, folks, this is a tough way to end the week if you're long the market. If you're long gold, you're happy, but Dow is losing about 724, the S&P down 113, the NASDAQ down 484. That will do it for us.
Hello, folks. Welcome to Kudlow. I'm Larry Kudlow. So markets crash over 700 points today after a bad inflation report, more tariff confusion. Oh, and by the way, Republicans really going to raise taxes? That could have done it.
Into the second term of the Trump presidency, and Americans are not happy with the Trump economy. Not even Larry Kudlow, it seems. According to a new poll, 60% of Americans believe the economy is bad. And once again, Donald Trump's tariff threats are fueling that pessimism. This week, Donald Trump threatened a 25% tariff on imported vehicles. In response to Donald Trump's threat, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney said this.
The old relationship we had with the United States based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperation is over. What is clear is that we, as Canadians, have agency. We have power. We are masters in our own home.
Masters in our own home. Mitra?
If Democrats plan to take back the House of Representatives, they're going to flip seats. So I think we should study the Democrats in the House who have been able to actually flip seats to see what they've done, and maybe that shows a roadmap. Why don't we just take a look, for example, at Oregon's 5th Congressional District, and it's been in the news a lot lately because it used to be held by a MAGA Republican congresswoman, and the MAGA Republican congresswoman, she liked to pretend that she wasn't really MAGA. She liked to claim that she stood on the side of labor. I was always very suspicious of that shtick, and someone who was very suspicious was someone who ran against her. Now the Democratic congresswoman from the middle flipped it and called her around in the debates. Congresswoman Janelle Bynum, now a Democrat, after flipping that seat from Oregon's 5th Congressional District. And you may know about that district also in the sense that Lori Chavez DeRever, now the Labor Secretary, although she's was that MAGA Republican congresswoman in Oregon, she claimed to be on the side of labor. But do y'all remember we covered this on the Midas Touch podcast before? The confirmation hearing where all of a sudden she said she's on the side of the oligarchy and she no longer supports the PRO Act. Remember this moment where Rand Paul, MAGA Republican Rand Paul, said the following to her. Let's play this clip.
So you no longer support the aspect of the PRO Act that would have overturned state right to work laws?
Yeah, there were so many parts.
That's a yes.
Yes, yes, sir.
Well, the Secretary of Labor no longer.
I'll talk about the Donald.
Oh no.
No.
Oh, that was America. That's so weird.
Remember when TYT's own Ben Glee was heckled and threatened by Trump supporters?
Ever seen a woman and been like, yeah, she's hot, but as long as she could look more like a duck.
I've always wanted to make love to a duck, personally. And we love being people, but we can also be ducks. I think that's why we elected the president who's orange. But they tossed a duck hair on top of his head. His name's Donald. My favorite policy is when he, believe me.
Now talk about the Donald.
Oh, no?
No.
Oh, I thought this was America. That's so weird. Oh, my God. Don't talk about this exactly what they would say in Russian. Don't talk about Vladimir Putin that way. Don't talk about the Donald. You programmed, man. Wow. And at least Putin's like a scary guy. Trump's a idiot. You listen to what he says. We used to have freedom of speech in America. That was part of the country. You remember that? Free Trump. That was freedom of speech. I love the whole anthem debate he's very upset about always. Apparently now in America, you have to stand. You must stand. While somebody sings, Land of the Free. Better stand during the free part of that song. You better stand up when he says how free we are.
That's
We don't use our damn brains anymore, I swear to God. You gotta hand it to Trump, though. The guy's a really communicator. He really is. He really knows how to boil a message down to a simple component, and he just repeats it over and over again. It's like he's hypnotizing us when he talks, and it works. It works. She can clearly sing. And then after the show, not only did she come up and argue with me saying that you shouldn't make jokes and she's so tired of it, and I said to her, but the whole point of comedy and the history of comedy has been to speak out against social injustice and speak out about politics. And she goes, I know, but I'm just tired of it. Well, if you know, then stop your nonsensical comment and let me do what I do. And then minutes later, a man came up to me in the same audience as I was greeting the crowd after the show, and he says to me, you shouldn't talk about the president like that. I loved your act until then. And I said, well, why not? That's my right to do that. And he goes, I'm just telling you, around here, you talk like that, you're going to get a in the back of the head.
Glebe was told this. MAGA, the free speech warriors, the freedom-loving patriots, the America's Too Soft crowd pulled this on him.
I am up speaking the truth that I feel needs to be spoken to protect the values that this nation was built on. So have a good day. And he walked off. It's not going to stop me because people have fought and died for this country. So if I have to tell jokes that are hard to tell and deal with consequences that are scary, then so be that, because I'm not going to back down from people who try to intimidate me like Donald Trump tries to intimidate everybody who speaks against him.
He would then talk about it with our audience.
She was heckling me, and because she wouldn't let me even speak about the president and said you couldn't talk about the Donald, I decided to triple down and go very hard. And this guy came up to me and he said, you're going to get a bullet in the back of your head. I know a lot of people walking around here who've been shot with bullets, a lot of people carrying around here. You better watch yourself. And it was just insane to me how Trump has effectively weaponized his supporters into trying to squelch any dissenting thought. And it's the very core of what our country is. So I said to the guy, if that's what has to happen, so be it. I'm not going to stop talking truth to power. I'm not going to stop criticizing our political leaders. I'm not going to stop speaking about the things I believe need to happen. Obviously, I prefer not to be shot. Please don't do that.
Oh my God.
But
and if you guys haven't seen the video, watch Ben's entire just takedown of this woman so brilliantly, and then ends it by like, I didn't even want to talk about this, and it was, but you did, and it's like, listen, don't heckle a cop. They will come after you.
It didn't quite have the hostility and.
My colleagues and I feel very strongly about the war planning meeting over unclassified phones. Obviously reckless, obviously dangerous. Both the mishandling of classified information and the deliberate destruction of federal records.
Hey, all, just a quick update from Vegas on what's going on with the Ukraine war. Two things. Number one, the Ukrainians have definitely been kicked out of their position in Kursk. That's the chunk of Russian territory that they invaded over the summer in order to get a negotiating chip. During the American intel and weapons blackout, the Russians were able to launch a multi-vectored assault. They basically relocated over 100,000 troops and basically hit the Ukrainians from all positions. Time when the Ukrainians couldn't see them coming because of the lack of the intel from the United States. The Ukrainians did manage to get their people out, but lost a lot of gear along the way. The Ukrainians
Ukrainians found themselves facing some new drone tactics from the Russians. Specifically, the Russians would fly in dozens of drones and then park most of them near the roads, wait for something to come by that they could pick up from, say, airborne reconnaissance, and then activate the drones and swarm in. So casualties were not light, and a lot of equipment was destroyed, especially softer things like ambulances and pickup trucks and vans. Even a couple tanks were abandoned. But most of the troops got out. Which brings us to number two. The degree to which that Donald Trump personally has been caught up in Russian propaganda is really robust. Because while this attack was going on in Kursk, the Russians, in order to communicate to their own people how wonderfully the war was going, were releasing things that were just not backed up like facts. Specifically, the idea that somewhere around 10,000 Ukrainians had been caught in what they call a cauldron and cut off from other forces. And in a cauldron, then you can push in from whatever direction you want because there's no retreat. Well, that did not happen ever. In fact, when Trump was repeating these things on his Truth Social posts, all the Ukrainians had already been out of Kursk, or at least the danger part of Kursk, for 48 hours. So just basic information from the American military and the American intelligence stuff is not reaching Trump. And he's just spouting out whatever he's being told by the Russians. Now, who specifically the vector was for sharing that information with Trump, I don't know. It could have been Putin with the administration, who has basically been compromised, really stupid, and has fallen for it. All three of these unfortunate options, but it held true. And then most importantly, yesterday, the 18th of March, we had a one-on-one phone call between Putin and Trump that lasted about 90 minutes, where Trump tried to convince Putin to adopt a ceasefire. And Putin's position is that he would do a partial ceasefire that involved things like not attacking energy infrastructure. He violated that less than 3 hours after the phone call. And he said that for real ceasefire, again, 30-day ceasefire, what he expected was an end to all Western weapons transfers to Ukraine, an end to all intelligence support to Ukraine, and an end to all military recruiting within Ukraine to set the stage for the complete dissolution of the Ukrainian armed forces. And this for a 30-day ceasefire. It's obvious to anyone who is familiar with this conflict, or anyone who is familiar with nouns, that Putin is not interested in a ceasefire unless he gets everything he wants on Ukraine long run. And that means that
it's a shame people aren't doing this to lower blood sugar levels, especially when you have the ingredients just sitting around your cup.
It's Saturday, March 29th, 2025, and we have a huge update for you on our upcoming severe weather outbreaks. That's right, outbreaks. We've got one coming up tomorrow, and we've got potentially another one as we go towards the middle of next week. We also have significant winter weather to talk about. So this is likely going to be a long video, and it all starts talking about this little trough over here creeping into the West Coast. You can see it very clearly on satellite there. Now let's dive into talking about what this thing is going to do. Starting with our most concerning event in the near future.
When we see so many large law firms capitulating to Donald Trump, it is incredible when we see law firms exercise courage and lead the way. One such firm is the firm Kecker, Van Nest, and Peters. It's one of the most renowned firms in the United States, and they put out a powerful statement. The reverberations of Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Doge wrecking ball to the United States of America is being felt in pissed off voters. We reported before what went down earlier this week, a political earthquake in Pennsylvania, Lancaster County, which didn't go Democrats since 1889. A Democratic Senate seat there flipped to Democratic candidate James Malone became the state senator there. We're seeing Donald Trump withdraw the nomination of Elise Stefanik in a plus 21 Trump district in New York after Trump's pollster, Fabrizio, Trump's guy, started showing Donald Trump all of this data, both what's going on in New York, Pennsylvania, and of course what's going on in Florida, where Fabrizio, again, Trump's pollster in the 6th congressional district in Florida, has the...
So the White House is doing everything possible to, put a positive spin on the signal leak that
happened earlier this week. You know, Carolyn Levitt's been out there telling us, like, it was no big deal. There were no war plans or classified information. Y'all are making too much of this. And of course, you have had other members of the administration, including Mike Waltz, who added Jeffrey Goldberg to that text chain, come out and actually suggest that somehow Goldberg put himself in there by disguising his name in Waltz's phone. Yes, that is something Waltz.
Caroline, I have two questions. One on a follow-up on something you just said. But since we have these messages released, and you said that the president has now personally reviewed them, in the chat at one point, Pete Hegseth wrote 14-15 strike drones on target, and in all caps, he said, "This is when the first bombs will definitely drop." Does the president feel that he was misled by his national security advisors, whoever it was that told him there was no classified information in there, now that he's seen these messages?
I've now been asked and answered this question 3 times by the both of you, and I've given you my answer. The president feels the same today as he did yesterday.
Okay, sorry, I might follow up on what you had just said.
Go ahead, Philip. I'm not taking your follow-up. Philip,
I have a follow-up on something you just said, though, Caroline. That's
Caitlin, I'm not taking your follow-up. Philip, go ahead. I have called on you.
The vice president seemed to express some frustration that Europe wasn't doing more to police waterways in their backyard, noting in that signal thread that 40% of European trade goes through the Suez Canal. Does the president share that opinion and frustration? And then going forward, should the Europeans be responsible for policing that waterway?
Well, the president was asked this question yesterday by the pool in the cabinet room, and he answered this question. He said yes, he believes that Europe has been, as the vice president put it, freeloading on the American taxpayers and off the backs of the United States of America, and he wants to ensure that Europe pays their fair share. He's always been very honest and upfront about that, and I think the vice president shares those concerns with him as well. Sure.
Enlisted soldiers, sailors, and Marines would face consequences if they shared this type of information inadvertently with a reporter. Can you tell us more why the president is so willing to give Mike Waltz a mulligan here?
Again, I have now been asked and answered the same question using different language multiple times. If anybody has another question, there's a lot of different things going on in the world. We have tariffs possibly being implemented later today. The president is going to talk about that at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Caroline, if I can ask you very quickly about the information we've seen, just to set the predicate on this. Has the president been briefed and physically he's seen all the details of the chat as printed by the
I just spoke to the president about it, yes.
Then let me ask you, if I can, very quickly. In the chat, Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, details F-18s, Tomahawks, some of the weapons that were used. He details the timing involved for this, all of which occurred 31 minutes before, as he says, F-18s.
Before the Supreme Court, where Trump's team, his attorney, argued that a president could order the military to stage a coup and to have their political opponent assassinated execution, unless this theory that they were impeached by the Senate. Do you share the view that presidents are basically above the law?
Look, Caitlin, I think we have to be careful about imputing words into the president's attorneys that they didn't actually say. What the president's attorney said, Caitlin, to be clear, is that there is a checks and balances system in our Constitution. Now, some things the president does, private acts, are liable to criminal penalties, but most of the things that the president does in their official duties, we have a system of impeachment, we have a system of checks and balances, the legislative branch that I'm a member of, the judicial branch. I do not read the president's attorneys as saying that the president could order a coup. The president's attorneys are saying that the constitutional checks and balances system would address that problem, and I think that's an important distinction.
But let me stop you right there. It's John Sauer, Trump's attorney, and when he was asked by one of the justices if the president could order the military to stage a coup and would it count as an official act, meaning he couldn't be prosecuted for it, he said it would depend on the circumstances. I mean, what circumstances warrant a president ordering the military to stage a coup?
Well, first of all, he did say it depends on the circumstances, so that opens up a whole lot of avenue for context there. But more importantly, Caitlin, he's just saying that would count as an official act.
But that's an official act in your view, too?
But could I finish the answer to the question, Caitlin? An official act, there are a number of checks and balances in our system. There's the impeachment process. There's the budgeting authority that Congress has. There are a number of ways where Congress has a check and balance control over the President of the United States. All he's saying is that the criminal liability procedures that exist in this country don't cover the president's official acts. And by the way, how could anybody disagree with that, Caitlin? Should Barack Obama be prosecuted?
President Trump orders a mid-flight change in the cockpit, but the pilot's bold sparks a heated standoff. The cockpit of Air Force One hums with quiet precision, a symphony of blinking lights and scrolls. Major Daniel Carter, a seasoned U.S. Air Force officer, pilot's seat, his hands steady on the yoke, eyes scanning the instruments. His co-pilot, Captain Emily Hayes, monitors the radar, her focus unbroken. The plane cruises at 35,000 feet, carrying the most powerful man in the world to his next destination. But the calm is about to shatter. The cockpit door opens with a soft click, and President Donald Trump steps inside, his presence filling the small space. Secret Service agents hover just outside, their shadows visible through the doorway. Trump, in a sharp navy suit with a red tie, adjusts his cufflinks, his expression a mix of curiosity and command. Major Carter glances over his shoulder, nodding respectfully. Mr. President, Carter says, his voice steady. Good to see you, sir. Trump raises his hand in a gesture of authority, his palm open, a faint smile on his face. Major, I've been thinking, he begins, his tone carrying that familiar confidence. We're flying over Ohio right now, aren't we? Carter nods, his eyes flicking back to the controls. Yes, sir. We're on course, passing over Ohio as we head to our scheduled stop. Trump steps closer, his hand still raised, his voice firm. I want you to adjust the flight path. Let's do a flyover of Columbus. My supporters down there, they'd love to see Air Force One. It'll be a great moment, a symbolic gesture. They'll talk about it for years. The air in the cockpit thickens. Captain Hayes glances at Carter, her eyebrows raised slightly, but she says nothing. Carter's grip on the yoke tightens, his mind racing. A flyover might sound simple, but Air Force One doesn't deviate from its flight plan. Not without clearance, not without considering security protocols, air traffic control, and a dozen other factors. He turns to face Trump, his expression calm but resolute. Mr. President, Carter says carefully, I understand the sentiment, sir, but I'm afraid that's not possible. We have strict safety and protocol regulations. A deviation like that requires prior approval from multiple agencies, and we can't risk any security concerns. Trump's smile fades, his hand lowering slightly. He leans forward, his voice dropping to a more intense. I'm the President of the United States. I'm telling you to happen. It's a simple flyover. My people deserve to see this plane. They elected me, after all. Carter holds Trump's gaze, his jaw set. He's flown Air Force One for years, trained to handle pressure, but this is a test unlike any other. He knows the stakes. Disobeying a direct order from the president could have consequences, but compromising safety protocols could be catastrophic. He takes a slow breath, choosing his words with precision. Sir, Carter says, his voice firm but respectful, I have the utmost respect for you and your office, but my primary duty is to ensure your safety and the safety of everyone on board. A last-minute change like this, it's too risky. Clearance from the FAA, coordination with local air traffic, and a full security assessment. I can't authorize that without proper protocol. Trump's eyes narrow, his hand dropping to his side. He steps closer, his voice rising slightly. You're telling me no? I've flown on plenty of planes, Major. I know what's possible. I'm not asking for a landing, just a quick flyover. Make it happen. The tension in the cockpit is palpable. Captain Hayes shifts in her seat, her hands hovering over the controls, ready to assist if needed. The hum of the engines seems louder now, filling the silence between the two men. Carter doesn't flinch. He knows he's right, and he knows Trump need to hear it. Mr. President, Carter said, I've flown this aircraft through storms, through every challenge imaginable. I've never compromised on safety, and I won't start now, not even for a flyover. If we deviate without clearance, we risk everything. I'm sorry, sir, but my answer is no. Trump stares at Carter, his expression unreadable. For a moment, it feels like the standoff might escalate. The Secret Service agents outside the door shift slightly, sensing the tension. But then something shifts in Trump's demeanor. He straightens, his lips pressing into a thin line, and he nods slowly. You're a tough one, Major, Trump says, his voice softer, respect in his tone. I like that. You're doing your job, keeping us safe. I can respect that. Carter exhales quietly, his shoulders relaxing just a fraction. Thank you, sir, he says, his voice steady. I appreciate your understanding. Trump adjusts his tie, glancing at the control panel one last time. Keep us on course then, he says, his tone lighter. But next time, maybe we'll plan that flyover ahead of time. He gives Carter a nod, a silent acknowledgement of the officer's professionalism.
Putin kills his opponent's people. Putin does not allow dissent. And that's kind of a model that Trump actually likes. For the first time in modern history, we have a president who is aligning himself with authoritarian governments all over the world. So it is a very distressing moment. What is extraordinarily distressing to the majority of the American people is that we now have a president who has very strong authoritarian tendencies, and in many ways is moving the United States of America, the longest standing democracy on earth, into an authoritarian style society. And in many ways, he likes what Putin does. Putin does not allow freedom of the press.
Are you ready?
Putin kills his opponent's people. Putin does not allow dissent. And that's kind of a model that Trump actually likes. So what the American people are seeing now is that for the first time in modern history, we have a president who is aligning himself with authoritarian governments all over the world, with not only Russia, but with Iran, with Belarus, rather than with democratic governments in Europe and in the Ukraine. So it is a very distressing moment. And in terms of the Republican Party, as part of that movement toward authoritarianism, you have people like Elon Musk, who is the richest guy in the world. And what he says to Republicans, if you don't do what the President of the United States wants you to do, we're going to spend unlimited amounts of money to defeat you. So you better get in line. And you have Republicans who know better. Obviously, everybody in America knows that Russia started this war. But you have Republicans who are just too afraid to speak up against Trump. It's a sad state of affairs.
Sad state of affairs. That's all you're going to say, Bernie?
Well, for a start, it would undermine what the United States of America has been about for 250 years. America is the longest standing democracy on earth. And for so many years, it's not perfect. Knows American democracy is not perfect, and that our foreign policy over the years has had many, many flaws. But the truth is that all over the country, developing nations look to the United States, to our Constitution, to our Declaration of Independence, to our appreciation of human